regular work session. And we will call the roll once again.
Mayor Wolcott.
Here.
Vice Mayor Biendo.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Councilmember Villanueva.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Thank you.
Given that our audience has grown substantially, I'll ask all of you to join us once again in pledging allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item.
This is discussion regarding semi-annual presentations from chair or representatives of each city boards and commissions. And I wanted to go ahead and take these in alphabetical order, but I'm checking to see it. Margaret, you're here? Okay, very good. We're going to go ahead and do the Arts Commission first.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Margaret, could you pull that microphone up a little closer?
Okay, so do you want me just to go through what I've written? Oh,
There's no time. Okay. No timer on this. We appreciate your being here and presenting us the plan. So if you would go over that report, we'd appreciate it.
okay. The chair regrets that she could not be here, so I am in her stead. So first I'm going to start with our major topics of discussion. And the first was the Arts Information Exchange Breakfast for the West Valley, where we shared ideas and information between commissions and organizations located in the West Valley. Key topics that were discussed included funding, projects, partnerships, and state of the arts in Arizona and West Valley. We then established an events calendar on the city website that included a communication and partnership with art organizations in Surprise to publicize art events. We did actually get feedback from some people, including, let's see, Benavia, the ballet, Conservatory Ballet, Musical Surprise, Phoenix Opera, West Valley Arts Council, WAM, and many others. So we now have those events publicized on our calendar. We also have the public art hanging policy, which our commission redrafted the hanging policy and partnered with the West Valley Arts Council to hang the artwork, which the hanging of the artwork began today. Unfortunately, we discovered that some of the clips that were needed to hang some of the artwork are for light pieces, and so we have to wait for the heavier equipment. The loss of funding of budget was a big discussion that we had, in which we talked about projects and partnerships that the commission could participate in with other art organizations in Surprise, and also help in locating grants for 501c3 organizations. We discussed suggestions of possible funding sources for our commission and a possible budget for the fiscal year 2014. Oh yeah, it's here. We also discussed a lack of communication on art events planned by the city, in which we were attempting to come to an understanding of the process of which art events are reported to the Arts and Cultural Advisory Commission. We had a mural painted at Bicentennial Park. The commission granted monies to the Surprise Police to partner with an art organization, which was WAM, in the city to paint a mural around a restroom facility at Bicentennial Park. And the intention was to prevent the spread of graffiti. The chair, Sandra Staley, and Fred Ramsey appeared on Surprise on Parade for Sun City Grand, encouraging public participation in our meetings and art events, and discussed art events that happened in Surprise. We also had the West Valley Arts Council give a presentation on the economic impact of arts in the West Valley. And that study was conducted by the National Endowment for the Arts, and some key points of that was that the arts contributed to about 15 million in funds for the West Valley. The commission handbook, of course, we went over that as a commission, discussing any questions and comments that we had prior to the meeting. The commission also supported the WHAM Arts Festival at the Tourism Advisory Commission meeting. Chair Sandy Staley presented the study of economic impact that was previously presented by the West Valley Arts Council and how to the Tourism Advisory Commission and how it related to the Arts Festival. We had a booth at the Thunderbird Art Festival, and we used the booth as a hub to pass on information for the other arts organizations in the city, including, we also had a map that detailed the public art that was currently in the city. We hope to grow that. We also had a survey that we passed out, and I apologize, I had the copy of the survey and it did not come out with it. But for what we saw from the survey, we had about 304 participants take place in the survey, and the majority of the survey responders were from Surprise. We also had the biggest age range was about 45 to 60s and upper. And one of the comments that we had that reoccurred was that they would like to see more arts festivals and plays and art walks. We presented as a commission to the General Planning Commission on the future of the arts, and one of the comments that we included was the possibility of an art accelerator or arts district to further encourage the growth of the arts community and improve the quality of life. We also established an arts encounters, which was a partnership with other art organizations in Surprise to provide free public art events. Our first one happened in February, and that was a tour of the West Valley Vista, or I'm sorry, the Valley Vista Performing Arts Center backstage. Our recommendations that happened between June to now included the support of WHAM's Arts Festival. We requested additional funding for WHAM from the Tourism and Council. We recommended approval of the redrafted art hanging policy and awarding of the contract to West Valley Arts Council. And we also recommended a section in the general plan to cover the arts. We changed the topic of concerns to future recommendations. We felt that fit a little bit better, so I hope that makes more sense. We submitted a budget for the recommendation for a budget for the 2014 fiscal year. We also would like to recommend the idea of the percentage of all city-sponsored arts and cultural event ticket sales go toward funding the commission budget as part of a plan to find a permanent funding source. We also wanted to express our concerns over the communication facilitation between staff and other boards and commissions, including the possible appointment of council liaisons into the commissions. And that was from the handbook. And we also wanted to, a concern of ours was the notification of art events in the city, and hopefully we would like to have the process go a little bit smoother, in which any arts and cultural events come to the commission so that we can vet and give our recommendations on them.
Comments or questions from members? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. The establishment of events calendar was just for arts and culture, right? Okay. And then who's in charge of the heavier clips? West Valley Art?
No, that was someone who did ordering for the city.
What's that, Margaret?
That was someone that did ordering for the city, if I'm not.
Oh, so it's,
Procurement.
oh, so it's in procurement. Okay, so you know about that? Okay. The lack of communication on arts events planned by the city, you said there was a discussion and attempt to come to understanding of the process. After your discussion, did you understand the process? Or is it still a question mark?
There was still a question as far as where the Arts Commission comes into play. We understood that we did not have a budget in order to fund events. However, we were concerned about the fact that events were bypassing us simply because of the fact that we had no budget. And we felt that we should serve at the very least as a center to vet these organizations or events, and then give our recommendations on what we thought would be best for the city.
Okay. Can you get us a copy of the results of your
Yes.
survey?
Yes, I can do that. It's also published in our minutes, but I can give you a direct.
Yeah, could you?
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Margaret. And then, did you come up with a budget for the arts? I haven't seen it. Have you seen it, Chris?
It was
Oh, you
submitted
saw
in
it.
February.
Okay. I thought it was going to be in this document. Okay, so we got it. Okay, thanks, Margaret.
Okay.
Good job.
Vice Mayor.
If I may just quickly, that was part of the new process going into this year with the Boards and Commissions handbook, that funding requests that boards and commissions have be submitted to integrate into the budget process. And in fact, in the Office of Council and Mayor, Nicole's keeping a notebook of all the reports as well as any funding requests that are coming in from boards and commissions, so that council can have an opportunity to see those.
Okay.
And I also want to clarify, too, when the city manager forwards his recommended budget, that's his budget. And so the requests that are made by our commission members, our boards and commissions, for any funding will come to us, and that's our decision as to whether or not to include that and to build that into the budget. But ultimately, Mr. Hillman's budget will be an operations budget on the city operations. And so that's how we're going to merge the two pieces. So all of you commission members that are listening, that's how we want to make sure that this process is moving forward, so that your budget requests, whether we can accommodate them or not, they are being heard. And that it's coming to this body, and it's not going to get buried in another drawer someplace. You're going to literally have it here before us, and we will discuss it as we build the budget.
Through the mayor, since our budget is getting pretty close, do you have an idea what you're going to be asking for? And will it be strictly city budgets, or will there be private funding on this?
We have a budget that covers our plans for grants monies, including operating costs and public art. But the total that we are recommending is $52,500. And that also includes monies for an art festival, or to partner up with a 501c3 such as WHAM to create an arts festival, or not to create, but to help with an arts festival. And what else was there? Oh, that's right. Because of the art encounters, we're finding that not just the art encounters, but we're also finding that there are small incidentals that we're needing monies for, if possible, such as for the Thunderbird Art Festival. When we had a booth, we had nothing to give to the public, and we found that it really helped the public when we gave a flyer detailing what our commission was about, publicizing our meetings, talking about, public involvement into the commission. So,
Council member?
I want to thank and congratulate the Arts Commission, especially Chairman Sandy. 2 years ago, I believe it was about 2 years ago, your commission was essentially closed down, let's say. And there was some communication effort that happened that got lost in the shuffle, but fortunately you all hung together. You came back and you came back very strong, and I'm really pleased to see that and hear that. One of the things that I would really, for your future recommendations, that I think you and all of the boards and commissions, and since many of you are here, I'll hope you all hear it and realize that we work best when we all work together. So a recommendation to facilitate the communication between all of our various boards and commissions. And I hope I can see that same type of thing on every board and commission that's presented tonight or whenever we do it, because that's how we all work together. And when we're working together, then we truly become a city that's going to go places. We don't go places if we're fighting one another or don't even know what one another are doing. So I just appreciate and this organization, your Arts and Cultural Board, taking that task on and bringing it forward. Maybe just because you were the very first ones to present, and everybody else will have it too. Whatever the case, I appreciate it, and I hope that we can do that, and that everybody recognizes the fact that we're all one city and we need to work together.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions from the council on this report? Thank you so much, Margaret. Appreciate your being here, and we look forward to another report in, 6 months, I believe.
yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a request to go next to the Personnel Appeals Board. And I actually, while we're taking the Personnel Appeals Board, I would appreciate if staff could give me a list of the remaining reports that are given. So if the Personnel Appeals Board would make their report at this time, I'd appreciate it. Again, if you would identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name is Ron Lesh, and in this capacity, I'm the chairperson and the presiding or chief hearing officer for the Personnel Appeals Board. Personnel Appeals Board, for some that don't know, is really a permanent ad hoc committee. It's composed of 7 members. 5 of its members form a hearing panel at any required employee disciplinary appeal hearing. The PAB's chairperson is a permanent member of the hearing panel. In the past 6 months, ending December 31st, 2012, there was really no actions or no hearings going on, and there's been no requests. However, since its formation, in 2009, the board has received 4 employee appeals of disciplinary actions taken by the city and has conducted 3 formal hearings for these requests. All the appeal disciplinary actions were for alleged unjust discharge. All the hearings are conducted in accordance with the state's open meeting laws and are open to the public unless the appellant requests the hearing be conducted in an executive hearing session. However, the board's decision, when it is rendered for the appeal disciplinary action, is conducted in the open meeting format. As far as budgetary issues are concerned, the PAB does not have an operating budget, nor does it have any requests for any operating or special funds from the city at this time to conduct its activities. And that, in a nutshell, is the first semi-annual report to the City Council.
Questions or comments from the council? Questions? Very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ron.
Next, we have the Board of Adjustment.
Madam Chair, my understanding in talking with Sherry earlier is there won't be a report. There are about 3 or 4 boards and commissions from whom we won't hear a report. The Board of Adjustment is currently going through a transitional period with its membership, so we thought we'd wait until the semi-annual report.
I do believe, though, building and construction, is Mr. Carter here? He was going to be running late this evening.
So then we'll move forward to Community and Recreation Services Advisory Commission. Welcome. I don't know who you are, but if you would just identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wayne Turner. I'm the chairman of the CRS Advisory Board. And first off, I'll go over a couple of the items that we have gone through over the last year. And then I've got a little finalization we'll go over real quick. And then we'll be open for any questions you may have. Over the last year, some of the major topics of discussion we've gone through have been to identify the funding for CRS capital improvements over the 5 and 10-year plan, along with budget priorities for the fiscal year 13 and 14. Along that fiscal year 13 and 14, we've looked into budget supplemental recommendation forms, as well as one of our key things, or key items we're looking into is the Sports Village feasibility study and conceptualization plan. That's something that we feel very strongly is something that we really need to take a look at and try to move forward with that. We've already met with a number of people and feel like that's something the city really, really needs, and we'll go into that a little bit later. Also, we've looked into the Heritage Park restroom and parking improvements at Marley Park, as well as the DUSD, City of Surprise, and the IGA, along with the Surprise Pickleball Court expansion, and update of Surprise Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We also looked at the BYU Recreation Center survey, which we found very surprising. They did a great job on that. Wonderful job by those students. And the one thing that was really a key for us is we really noticed how many people involved in that were residents that were south of Bell versus north of Bell. That was a real key. Those are the residents that really feel we need to get some recreation, more components going. So we also had the CRS components of the general plan, along with youth baseball practice field expansion through donations is something we're looking into as well, along with new community park with the dog park, aquatics facility, lighted fields, and a skate park. Along with that, the Sports Village is the Academy Club Sports Action Plan, something we're looking at maybe trying to see if there's a way to combine the two of those, as well as nominees for the 2013 Surprise Recreation Campus Hall of Fame. Some of the recommendations we made this year were the motion to recommend the possible baseball practice field expansion, along with the funding through community donations, as well as the budget priorities for the fiscal year 13 and 14. And another motion was to formally approve the Marley Park restroom concept as displayed. And another motion was to approve Al DeShazo and Bill Pupo for the 2013 Surprise Recreation Campus Hall of Fame. And again, there you go with the Sports Village feasibility study. Some of our prioritized initiatives this year were the development of the feasibility, again, of that Sports Village concept, along with adequate funding for the CRS CIP program. And then we also updated the CRS master plan and looked into adequate funding for that 2007 master plan, which still is in works. We also looked into development of open space to meet acres per 1,000 residents requirement that we're still grossly far behind on, as well as development of the City Hall trail system development per that 2007 master plan. And just real quick, Mayor and City Council, I've been a citizen here in the City of Surprise since 1996 and a member of the board for 10 years. During that time, the city has become a wonderful place to live and raise our families, along with all the recreational activities that we have out there. But my concern is over the last few years during this difficult economic crunch, this city, like many around, has found the need to tighten their belts on spending. We all know that. That's just the fact of life. That's the way it is in 2013, unfortunately. But the thing I grew used to was a city, and it used to be everywhere you saw. The motto, live, work, play. And that's been completely wiped away like it never existed. And that's something that really concerns me right now. Those 3 words is what brought a number of families here in the first place back in the late 90s and early 2000s was live, work, play. Now, with the challenging times ahead, it's time to be forward thinking. We can't afford to just sit on our hands and wait and try to ride this wave out. We've got to be aggressive. If you want the city to continue and be a city for people to move into and continue to stay here with those families, we've got to enjoy what the city has to offer. It's really time to be aggressive. As our board goes, we've got very used to having a lot of different building projects over the years going on at the same time. And lately, we've been totally stagnant. And we, as well as you guys, have been sitting on our hands. It's almost to the point that some of us really wonder why we exist in the first place. We were put together to help implement and design it and get projects rolling, and there's been nothing over the last few years. We, like you, are very frustrated at the lack of growth within this city. But we feel it's time now to be aggressive and look for alternate funding sources. One of the ideas we have is that you, as the leaders of the city, really implore, we plead with you to look into those other ways to be able to fund stuff. There's ideas with bonds. Right now with the city's situation, we may be in a situation where we can actually look into those type of things and incur some of those costs. In doing so, you'll help create more tax dollars, more interest, and more revenue, which will help this city of ours become, again, the jewel that why we moved here in the first place. We've seen what the baseball stadium complex, the tennis facility, and our wonderful library have done to the status of the city. They've really they've put us on the map. As a board, we've seen firsthand how they've changed our city for the better. We've outlined some of these items, which I already spoke about, that would not only help our city out of these tough economic times, but thrust our city into a different arena as a major player in terms of recreation, not only throughout the state, the country, and even globally. One thing to remember, when we looked at this and throughout we saw with the 2 surveys, 20 years ago, this city was all thought of as north of Bell Road. Now with these 2 cities, more than ever, we found south of Bell is where the population is. And those are the people that want and need and are screaming for more recreation facilities. In 2007, many of you rather, approved that plan, the master plan per hour as a board recommendation. It's my hope now that the mayor and the council, along with the CRS board and our residents, can move forward and work together to get this 2007 plan back on track, off, and to get it going. We have a lot to do in this city if we're going to maintain and continue to grow with our residents. Thank you.
Any member of the council wishes to make a comment or question? Comments, questions? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, thanks, Wayne, for
You bet.
summarizing. Hey, you know, boy, I share your frustration. And I know, I mean, that's, you guys got to be thinking, why do we even exist when we're just kind of sitting still, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's, we aren't sitting still really, but what we are doing, we're getting ready to prepare for the future. And the only way that we can prepare for the future is to be financially sound.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what we're working on. And I know it seems like, well, that's not doing anything for me in this, but I agree, we need to look at other financing options.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I totally agree. What? Let me ask a couple specific things. Can't we include the sports village feasibility study and conceptual plan in the park plan, Mark? Okay. The pickleball.
Let the record reflect that that was a yes.
That was a yes. The completion of Surprise Farms Community Park, it needs a restroom, right?
Correct. Yes.
What else does
Well,
you guys outline what else it needs to
Yes.
be complete, and Mark
yeah,
knows?
we've already got that going through the, if I remember correctly, the 2017 budget process,
Okay.
all the way through there.
I think it would be helpful to take what you've done, Wayne, or at least Mark's probably already done it, but we need to put numbers to all these.
Absolutely. That's part of why we're asking for the
And,
feasibility.
and we totally share your thinking about how important recreation is in the city, okay? We've invested millions
Absolutely.
in tennis facility and baseball and all the rest of it, so we totally get that. And I think our aquatic center we need more utilization of our aquatic center, et cetera. And thank you, Chris Hillman, for having the BYU students do that recreation. I thought they did a super job. And they told us some things that we kind of already knew, but I agree with you. The most of the feedback came from south of Bell, the families.
Correct.
Okay, and that's where we need to focus.
Correct.
North of Bell has their own recreation facilities.
Exactly.
Okay, you know that. And anyway, but so yeah, I get all that. And so what are the pickleball court expansion? Are you guys thinking right by where the existing pickleball courts are?
That's what we're looking at. That's one of the avenues or one of the locations we're looking at.
Okay, and then the master plan for the CR, is the stadium part of that, Mark? The master plan as far as asset invigoration, et cetera, of the stadium, and okay.
Let the record reflect that was a yes.
That was a yes. Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Wayne. That's all I got.
Councilmember Woodard.
Some of your recommendations and prioritized initiatives, are these in any specific order on this sheet?
No.
Okay, I'll go back then to the same thing I was talking about last week and didn't get a lot of agreement on. But if we had a prioritization from what you feel is the priority, we get our input from you.
Right.
You're out amongst the community. You make the recommendations, and then we have to find a way to do it.
Correct.
So we need, and my feeling is that we need to know what your priorities are, because what your priorities are should be reflecting the community.
Absolutely.
And that's what they want.
Correct.
Well, if that's what they want, then it's our job to try to provide it.
Correct. Which is I'm sorry to interrupt you, which is what you saw in a large part of that BYU study. They came back, that was a fantastic job they did there, and they really highlighted what they thought, which is a lot of our recommendations as well.
Then we need to know that. If that's in a priority manner, I'd like to see that. I'd like to, we've got some great ones, and I agree with them. But I want to see things prioritized so that up here we can begin to focus in on those.
With budget numbers, right?
With budget numbers, yes, dollars. And Skip, you had a question about Surprise Farms Park.
Yes.
And there is a master plan for that park that's beautiful.
Correct.
And it's been sitting grass for 5 years. It was dirt for 5 years before that. And I would hope that's somewhere on that priority list.
Oh yeah, that absolutely. As we mentioned, their dog park is that's one of the locations we're looking for. The dog park number 2, and it's all been drawn up and just waiting to get the finances to be able to go ahead forward with it.
And we need to know that so we can do our part.
Absolutely.
We all work together.
Absolutely.
Member Villanueva.
Yes, looking at your list, I think one of my suggestions is we need a park on the south side of Grand Avenue between Grand Avenue and Greenway, a neighborhood park.
Right.
I'm not asking for a big park or anything like that, maybe a half-court basketball, ramada, and some. There's nothing available on the south side. You'd have to go across Grand Avenue. Right. And certainly the school, especially during the summer when the school is closed, and the kids in the neighborhood do not have any place to go to. So
Right.
I would like to suggest that you take a look at something like that.
Yeah, we've talked about that. The biggest concern is the landlocked situation. There's really not a whole lot of land, but that's something we have discussed a couple different times, and really, we feel the same thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, I just want to thank Wayne. I mean, there's not much that I can respond to. My frustration is exactly what you expressed up there, and I think that's a lot of our frustrations. I'm one of those families south of Bell. I mean, the aquatics and all of those amenities that are just overflowing right now. Our CRS staff cannot do any more than they're already doing, and anybody that was at the Easter extravaganza knows that, because it was organized chaos. But they did a great job. They did a great job, and families will show up. So certainly we need those amenities, and I'm looking forward to getting creative, creating partnerships and financial opportunities that will get us to where we need to be and accomplish some of those goals set in 2007.
I think this could be a very exciting time if we can get that done and really see phenomenal growth within the city.
Vice Mayor?
Just very quickly, thank you. I agree with the priorities comment that Councilmember Woodard was making a minute ago. Will some of those priorities come out of the updating of the master plan, for
Absolutely.
example,
Yes, sir.
as well as the other
Yes, sir.
planning processes?
Yeah, the
that are
problem we
going
have
on?
is the master plan was approved in '07, and here it is 2013, and we're still doing nothing with it. So we need to get that updated
Right.
and rolling.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you and the board, and I'm really saying this in a very general way, too, to all of the commissions that are represented here this evening. You raise a frustration level that all of us share. It's not just the boards and commissions that are frustrated. We are as well. But I think Skip began by commenting about the need to focus on our finances. And literally, we can't do all these wonderful things if we don't have a solid financial underpinning. And that has been our focus. You mentioned live, work, and play. Well, we certainly have lots of places to live in Surprise. But we don't have a lot of places to work in Surprise. And 80% of our workforce leaves every day. And so we're looking, that is a focus and a priority of our city. It's a focus and a priority of this council, and it's reflected in our strategic plan, which we just adopted this last week. And so while we can't put a dollar amount that we could fund in the next 5 years on that strategic plan reasonably, but we can at least have a plan and a vision. And that's what I really appreciate about the process of the boards and commissions, because what you're doing is helping us gather information from the community to help us grow that vision and put the meat on the bones of our strategic plan and figure out how we're going to get where we want to go to make this a truly wonderful place to live, work, and play. Absolutely. And so I know that a lot of wonderful things have been done with partnership. And I got to speak specifically to just the pickleball community. Look at what they've done. Yes. They've taken it upon themselves to raise money, to enhance the facilities that they use, and it's really becoming a really special place in the city of Surprise, believe it or not. Now, I live across the street from pickleball courts in my neighborhood, and I know that many of those players are not just using their own facilities that are in an HOA, but they're using city facilities as well. So it's not just the folks south of Bell that are using and need city facilities, and that are finding partnerships to try to help and enhance city facilities. It's all of us, and we are here to serve the needs of all of our citizens, and recognize that as we grow, we need to be able to respond and prepare for making this city every bit as enticing as it was when we came here. So I really, really appreciate all of the work that you've done and your commission has done at bringing forward recommendations. And I absolutely agree with Councilmember Woodard and Biondo that we do need a prioritized list, because I can tell you right now, there's no way we can guarantee that we'll be able to fund even one. But at least if we have a plan, we can at least start to set the path for how we can find a funding plan for some of these items.
Absolutely.
So appreciate all the work. Again, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Next group is the CDBG. Anyone from CDBG here to give a report?
I don't believe there'll be a report from CDBG. You may recall that we authorized a CDBG commission, but at this point, the CDBG responsibilities are being handled through the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. Next is, I'm going alphabetical order, so Disabilities Advisory Commission. Welcome, and if you will, please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Michelle Hernandez, and I'm the Disability Chair Commission, or Disability Commission Chair. And I want to thank, first of all, Mayor Wolcott, Council, for the opportunity to present this semi-annual report. First of all, the Disability Advisory Commission is charged with addressing the needs of individuals with disabilities while increasing public awareness, advocacy, and inclusion. Let me go ahead and hand out, I was quite proud of our brochures. We didn't bring you a complete plan, we brought you brochures. And what we do is we serve at the will of the council, and we advise the city council and staff on issues of access, representation, employment, housing, and quality of life affecting the city residents with disabilities and their respective families. Commissioners also serve as a resource for city residents with disabilities and their families to express concerns regarding issues affecting them. We have several focus areas. We recently have approved and submitted our 2013-14 strategic plan, and our focus areas are business, transportation, connectivity, communication and outreach, disaster, security and emergency preparedness, advocacy, housing and visitability, and financial solutions. Our current commissioners are John Yeager, he's our vice chair, Allison Klein, Commissioner Sheila Kaiser, Commissioner Michelle Lewis, who has served for over 6 years. She's our commissioner, Dr. Deborah Jones, and myself. The DAC is currently working on getting accurate demographics and will provide those in our next report to the mayor and council. But we are getting the word out. The Disability Advisory Commission meets on the third Wednesday of the month and is televised on Surprise 11 TV as of December 16th, 2012. Thanks to you all, because this would not have been possible without your great support. You can also find a link to a video on the City of Surprise website at www.surpriseaz.gov. The Commission has also proposed that the City provide a web page detailing the resources provided by the DAC, which will increase public awareness and advocacy on issues important to Surprise residents with special needs. As advised, the content of this proposal only includes information. Graphics, layout, design, etc., will be handled by the city's marketing and communications department. As per our strategic plan approved by the City Council, we also ask that this information be included in the next issue of the Surprise Progress magazine. We've had numerous milestones, considering we had a very rocky time before. We almost weren't here, and it's been amazing how much has been accomplished in this last year. One of the milestones to start out with is the Above and Beyond program, which publicly recognized businesses that improve accessibility in excess of ADA requirements. The televised DAC meetings. The City Council approved DAC regular meetings to be televised on TV 11 and provide a link on the city's website for replay and archive. The televised DAC meetings began December 16, 2012. We also now are participating in the HOA Academy Awareness to have the community businesses voluntarily participate in the removal of barriers and to improve accessibility. We also were asked to evaluate the effectiveness of the Dial-A-Ride program. The in evaluating the effectiveness of the new Regional Public Transit Authority program for the individual with disabilities within the community, we have found that this is a really great resource and something that I think is just going to really, really start being utilized even more. And another milestone is the assistance with grant submissions. Okay, we did help to create a grant to install accessible power doors on the restrooms in the Northwest Regional Library. That is still pending, but we're hoping to hear soon. And we also have worked with the police on abuses of handicap parking. As much as we can work with them, all we can do is ask for information and see what we can do, although we can't do a whole lot other than kick it back over to them. Now, I'm going to come to the budget request, which is really important. Okay, and I consider this an equity investment because you're investing in a population that is very vulnerable. One of the things that is very near and dear to our hearts is the Above and Beyond program. We're requesting that $750 for year 2013 for the Above and Beyond program to help encourage businesses and individuals to foster and promote ADA enhancements. A possible positive outcome of this program may encourage all citizens to shop within Surprise. A goal would be to attract more business in the community that serve people with special needs. And so that is $750 for the whole 2013 program year. The biggie is now going to be closed captioning for the City Hall Council Chambers televised meetings. We're requesting between $28,200 to $35,400 for closed captioning installation, configuration, and service to meet the needs of the aging population, as well as reach the broadest spectrum of the community with hearing loss, i.e. born deaf, late deaf, and hard of hearing. And we decided to go with closed captioning after much deliberation because not everyone signs. So we felt we would reach a much broader market that way because even our elderly are some of them suffer from hearing disabilities. So this will provide closed captioning for 48 council meetings, workshops, etc., 16 DAC meetings and workshops, and 12 planning and zoning meetings. I know this sounds like an awful lot of money, and it's our wish list. It's a dream, but we can dream. And without dreams, nothing happens. We could not even have gotten to this point had it not been for the support of the council. And Mayor, thank you, Mayor, Council. But I also want to recognize the Human Resources Department. Part of the reason we have grown in leaps and bounds and have accomplished so much is because April, Rika, and Mike have been there with us every step of the way. We know that there's only so much that we can do, but we're trying to lay out a plan for you all that, as budget allows and time, etc., that you'll be ready to do whatever you need to do, provided you've been given the plan. And I hope that this plan that we have provided for you really is of special interest to you, because this is, as I said, a vulnerable population, a population that maybe they can't come here because they're wheelchair bound, they're homebound. Some of them without providers, etc. We need to be able to show them that there are resources out here. And primarily, that's basically it. The reason we brought you a brochure as opposed to the plan, because we've already submitted our plan, was because we're going to be attending the WHAM Arts is Alive Festival, and it's the abilities, not disability portion of it that we are going to be participating with. And we're quite excited that our children are going to get to try out new equipment to be able to tap into those inner resources. And I'm not sure if there's anything else that I'm missing that you all would like to ask me any questions on.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have any idea what our challenged population is?
No, that's why I expressed that our demographics, it's really hard because of privacy issues. We did at one point request that information from, I believe it was the fire department, because they have an online database. But there's that legal issue, which we'd like to kind of kick around, because people have signed up online. I know that my family has. And if we could get better statistics, I checked on all the statistics you all have available. There's nothing detailing anything about what our special needs population is.
Okay.
Councilmember Woodard?
Hi, Michelle.
I,
What did you call it? Ability, not disability, that WHAM event coming up this weekend. That's great. Have you got some people signed up for that? That program, there's a number of programs that are available, and I'm wondering, I guess my question is, are we getting this out through the televised meetings so that the people that are can use this will be aware of it?
yes, we did mention it on our last meeting, but because of some issues with it not being a council-sponsored event or put on by the city, Parks and Recs told us that they couldn't send this information out to its participants, which I found strange because the deck, this was something that was voted on and agreed upon and serving our community. So I'm afraid that many people are going to be deprived because they don't know, and there's only so many ways for us to be able to reach this target market.
Excuse me, city manager, isn't this a city-sponsored event? A WHAM? I mean, we're pretty involved in it. I guess here's one of those opportunities where we have a disabilities commission, we have an arts commission, we have the city, and we have a private organization that we could all work together. And I'm not hearing that's working real well.
Mr. Hillman?
I'll be happy to sit down and we'll work through those issues. You know, we
Appreciate
can see
that.
what we can do.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. I have resorted to knocking on doors. I'm basically going from business to business trying to let people know about this, and I'm going, wait a minute, there's no way physically possible that we're going to be able to reach this market.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Williams?
Yeah, just one question. Michelle, that was the extent of your budget request?
That's it.
And do we have copies of what they've requested? And the and this doesn't have to be answered now. The closed captions, that's a one-time cost?
It's the closed captioning that includes also the installation and configuration of the whole setup, and basically it's going to serve not just our commission and our televised meetings, but it's going to be used primarily by the council and also the P&Z. So what we've done is we've broken it up so that we know how much we can afford based on how many meetings we're assuming they're going to be. And so we're going between, that's why I gave you between the 28,200 and the 35,400. Okay.
Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to mention quickly, they've been doing an incredible job, by the way, but just at our last council meeting, we approved a new member of the Disability Advisory Commission.
Mm-hmm.
You may recall Michelle Belson
Yes.
will be joining the Disability Advisory Commission.
We are sorry that Roland has left us. He was a vital member of our commission, but we were very excited to welcome Michelle. Now there's going to be 3 Michelles. I didn't realize that at first.
So,
I have, Councilmember Hall?
to Councilman Williams' question, so it's an ongoing expense. It'd be annually. If you want to do
Yes,
closed
sir.
captioning, we put on
Minus of course, the setup. Those expenses will be backed out after this.
Do you know how those break out, the setup and the ongoing?
I believe it was, as a matter of fact, it's in the initial stuff that we sent you.
You put it in the budget, you broke it out? Okay.
Yes, we did break
All
it
right.
out.
Thanks.
I'm just curious, when you have an opportunity, when we're able to gather more information, demographic information about the needs, special needs members of our community, I'd like to have a better handle on what their real needs are and what those what those deficits are. Because I know, I mean, I've run across people who feel that they wish they had a service that they don't feel like they have access to.
Right.
Unfortunately, we don't have a robust human services component at the county that provides a nice level amount of services across our communities in Maricopa County. And so it's really kind of a lot of nonprofits that are filling in that gap. So it would be helpful to have.
Totally, and for us,
Yeah.
because then we can gauge, especially for an event, and say, we're going to need 28 wheelchair parking places. We're going to need not an interpreter, well, actually, outside events, that's when we would need an interpreter, but I imagine you all already provide those for city-sponsored events when requested by the community. And if we could just get that information, that would be really helpful. But because of HIPAA and other, they were really hesitant to give us anything. And I spent quite a few hours on the internet. I was part of the 2010 Census Committee and going, this was never addressed. We didn't look at this, so we don't have a breakdown.
Excuse me, could you not have the side conversation? Thank you.
That's okay. So that's of great interest to us too. And as soon as we get it, I'll forward it on.
And the reason I wonder if we can reach out to our partners at Maricopa County and to other agencies. The point would be is if we can find a way to match up need with an agency. If we can't provide it ourselves, if we can find a way to match those services up, that would be really a great opportunity for us. Just kind of, I know that there are a lot of nonprofits that are out there that provide service, and I think it would be helpful to just find those opportunities.
And I also, my parting note here would be to thank you all on the Dial-A-Ride. You can't imagine how it's going to help this population, because the subscription component of it, so someone can get to work who's got Down syndrome. Otherwise, that family may not be able to afford to have this child go. Those types of things. You're creating not just a better life, but you're creating an all-inclusive city. And wouldn't that be a great tagline?
Well, Michelle, I have to say that, again, this is a partnership. And Dial-A-Ride, the way we regionalized our system with Dial-A-Ride, the way we did that created a true Dial-A-Ride system. What we had before was a nice service, but it really didn't get where we needed to go with a true paratransit service. And we really appreciate the input of this commission, because your commission is really, and your commission members individually are the ones that kind of help save the day for us and really make it clearly articulate the need for the city so that we can make the right policy decision at the dais. So that's why this kind of collaborative effort makes a real difference for our community.
Well, I'm very proud to be a citizen of Surprise. Coming from New Mexico, I thought that we were pretty advanced, but I'll tell you, this is a very special needs friendly environment, and we still have so far to go. But can you imagine, including tourism? We could be having conferences, et cetera, out here that will generate income.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Michelle.
you.
I appreciate your report.
Thank you all.
Lost Trust Fund Commission? Is anyone here from the Lost Trust Fund Commission?
Yes.
Thank you. If you would please identify yourself for the record.
Mayor Walcott, council members, my name is Ray Borst, and I am the chair of the Lost Trust Fund board. I believe you have a copy of what we refer to as our work plan, which details pretty much what we do, and it covers the first 6 months of this year. Are you indicating you do not have a copy?
I believe it may have been submitted
It may have been submitted to,
It was not given to the city clerk's office.
we'll get a copy of it, but if you can just walk us through.
Okay, the board oversees the city's $8.5 million health benefits trust. I'm not sure exactly what the budget is for the city, but I'll bet we account for close to 10%. I'm going to look at the document that you don't have. It represents our semi-annual work plan, and we meet quarterly, and we review financial results provided to us by Blue Cross and by our consultant. February is our busiest month by far. It is during that month that we deal with funding levels, reserves, health plan rates, health plan changes, and that meeting has gone a lot smoother this year because of the fact that we went through the growing pains a year ago. If you'll bear with me, we've reviewed second quarter fiscal 2013 results at that meeting. Then we'll review the third quarter 2013 in May, and in August we'll do the fourth quarter FY 2013, and then in November we discuss the financial statements for the first quarter of 2014. So there is a bit of a lag there, and it's been tightened up as much as it can. Our purpose is pretty clear, and that is to make sure that the health plan trust is financially sound. And we make recommendations with input from staff as to how that should be accomplished. We're going to provide you details at your April 16th meeting of all the recommendations that have been put forth. This year, we'll be doing 2 audits. One is our annual audit, which is included in the city manager's budget and is done on an independent basis by the auditor retained by the city. We will also be doing a paid claims audit, which we prefer to do more frequently than is the industry standard, and we think it's helpful to us to understand on what we call high-risk claims, where the money's going, how we are managing the payments and the delivery of care. I'm going to wind up by saying, and I didn't mention it before, but to put any questions aside as to our financial soundness, we are in excellent financial shape. And I think going forward, we'll be able to maintain that position. So I would open up to any questions that you might have.
Council members? Vice Mayor?
Just more a comment than a question. It goes without saying what a critical committee this is and how critical their recommendations are as they come forward to council. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do is read some of the horror stories that are occurring in municipalities throughout the country to understand. So we so appreciate what this...
Thank you.
So thanks for keeping our health plan healthy, right?
Yeah. I guess that's a short version of what we do.
Yeah.
Mr. Hillman?
Just as a final note, again, in 2 weeks, you're going to be getting all the juicy details, of what, this commission is, putting forward and recommending to the council, and there will be some significant changes, and so, look forward to having that report. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome, Madam Chair. If you would please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Janelle Blair, and I'm the fortunate person that I get to be the chair for the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've served with quite a few of you. I'm pleased tonight to present the accomplishments that your Planning and Zoning team has done for you. We met 9 times this year and so far, and we've acted on 28 projects, 12 conditional use permits, 9 site plans, 1 planned area development amendment, 1 rezone, 2 general plan discussions, 1 neighborhood service discussion, and we also participated with the CAPER Awards and the SNAPper Awards. With the removal of the Quality of Life Commission this summer of 2012, P&Z inherited some additional duties. The duties include taking action and recommending approval on the Surprise Neighborhood Program, the Public Service Application funding recommendations, consolidation of the annual performance evaluation reports, and the annual action plan. On January 10th of 2013, the Commission approved their 2013 annual work plan that includes various general plan milestones that were hit. Surprise Unified Development Code updates, village planning, the CDBG program, and anticipated workshops. The work plan does not include development applications, and a portion of the Planning and Zoning's Commission workload will be determined actually upon the development applications submitted to the city, so we're there. The Commission is not requesting any budget funds for the fiscal year. What the Commission would like to do, though, is I'd like at this moment to thank all my commissioners for serving. They're a great bunch of guys that I work with, and they're always very helpful. I'd also like to thank the city staff. They have all been so supportive of us. With us bringing on the new projects and everything, being new at these projects and stuff, we've had all the support that we can actually get from the city. So we want to thank our staff. And we want to thank you for the City of Surprise as being our council and letting us serve with you to make Surprise so great. Any questions?
Any questions, council members?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a comment. I want to thank you, Jan, and the commissioners. I watch your meetings, and you do a fabulous job. You ask great questions. They're good questions. You can tell that everybody's done their homework. And it's an excellent representation of the city of Surprise for people coming before you. And I want to just convey my appreciation. Great job.
Any other comments or questions, council members? Well, then let me just echo what Council Member Hall just said. And I sort of feel like I'm looking at my mirror image, Madam Chair, because I too serve with a great group of guys. And so good for you. I'm so proud of the work that you and the commission do on behalf of the city, and it's our pleasure to work together with you. So thanks for all of your work.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have the Teen Advisory Commission. Welcome. If you could pull that microphone close to you so we can hear you, and also introduce yourself for the record.
Okay. Hi, my name is Yasmin Padilla.
A little closer.
Okay.
Very soft-spoken.
Is that good?
A little more.
Even a little more.
Oh, okay. Better?
That's much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Yasmin Padilla, and I'm the chair of the Teen Advisory Commission. I have copies of what's been going on lately. If you want me to pass these around? Yes? Okay.
Mark's going to help you. Not your strong suit, Mark.
No, wait for this
All right,
to go
thank
on.
you.
Okay. So basically, our whole entire committee, we're all new. We all interviewed. I think it was last year, sometime in April. No, April. I think it was August. And so we're all new. We've selected the new members. This was effective November 2012. We've gone through commission handbook training. We've gone over the strategic plan and goals for the commission. And then a big thing that's going on for us right now is a teen leadership summit. This is going to happen on the 16th. And I think this is an annual thing. I went to the one last year, and it's a lot of fun. We're all very excited. We've been talking about upcoming teen programs and events. This is like Battle of the Bands and the Teen Talent Show, Surprise, yeah. And then we've been introduced to the general plan update. We had someone come in and present to us. The CRS budget capital, that was all included. And then what we've been basically talking about is we did recommend to motion to approve chair and vice chair and secretary. And I think that's all. So yeah, that's what we've been up to lately.
Thank you. And I think, did you say the 16th for the
18th? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I want to make sure that was correct, because it was as my understanding, it was the 18th for the Teen Leadership Summit, and which we are all very much looking forward to. So, questions?
Yes, just a comment.
Oh.
What did you think of the Recreation Center survey?
The recreation, I thought...
Study that was done, what did you think from a teen standpoint?
We got the big packet. It was a really big packet. I feel like it was very descriptive as far as teenagers and how we saw the survey. I took the survey, and I mean, there's stuff for us to kind of put our input in, but there was nothing that really I'm a teenager and I could really relate to that. I saw a lot of pickleball in that one. There was a lot of pickleball, and then I did, there was some recommendations for other sports, especially. I think that's something that we recommended. We've submitted a budget plan for, is there's not a lot of recreation activities when you get the booklet for high schoolers exactly. It's usually 10-year-olds to 16-year-olds could play this sport, and not all 16-year-olds want to play with 10-year-olds in sports, if you know what I mean. So we've actually made a recommendation for that. So yeah, but the survey itself was something that we could have a voice in, but didn't exactly appeal because just.
So, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Yasmin, but very interested in seeing what the teenagers think of what's needed in Surprise. If you could pick 2 or 3 things that are needed in Surprise in terms of top priorities for your age group.
For
what
my
would they
age
be?
group. Oh, okay. Are we talking about recreation activities?
Yes.
Like I said, sports. We definitely have a lot of teenagers just kind of chilling on the streets, relaxing on the streets that don't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
If we had a place that was nearby that we could actually relax and that was made for teenagers, I feel like that could be really cool. And
So an indoor facility?
An indoor facility would be cool. I live by the library, so that's something that we could go to, but you can't exactly go and have a conversation with your friends there.
Yeah, right.
We definitely have a lot of opportunities, but as far as a place made for teenagers, I mean, that's not really available to us. But and then what else can I recommend?
What about the Aquatic Center?
The Aquatic Center is awesome. It's awesome. I definitely I go there during the summer. It's fun to see the whole entire family's there.
What about if you were queen of Surprise? would you make it year round?
A year-round Aquatic Center. I definitely would have extended when the Aquatic Center is open, because there's days when it's kind of hot and you're just kind of oh, I wish I could go for a swim, and the Aquatic Center is closed.
Yeah.
So maybe make it
expansion of it in some way you would like.
Yeah, but not during. I'm sorry, not during winter when it's freezing because, you know, we're not going to swim then. But a little bit more year-round. I'm like contradicting myself. I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. We do the same thing sometimes, you know, so don't worry about it.
Regularly.
Okay, well, thanks, Yasmin. I'm really glad that this and I can't make it to the Teen Summit because I'm committed to a economic development thing all morning, but I know John will be there and the mayor will be there, you know, and I'll hear back from what goes on in it. But I was at the one last year and I was very impressed, and so I know it'll be good. I'm sure John's lined up a great speaker. That speaker last year was
Calvin Terrell. Yeah.
And just, I'm not taking any credit for this. This is all the CRS staff, and this is all the Teen Advisory Commission putting this
Super.
together, so they're doing a great job.
Right. And so anyway, I just think we need to hear your voice more, because what is surprise. We think we know sometimes, but we miss it sometimes. So we need to hear from you.
Okay.
So
It's always better if we ask, and so we're asking. And it's really helpful to hear from you because you are our future, and you're the ones that we can really work towards planning for. And so you're a major priority for us. So I want you to, obviously, I think you can feel it from this council that we are very committed to making sure that we're listening to the youth. The youth are a priority for us.
Okay. Well, you guys are always welcome to come to the meetings. I know that we definitely have like room to speak and stuff. So if you want a broader statement from teenagers, we're all there. So.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you.
Yes,
What time on that? 9:30? 8?
Next one is the Tourism Advisory Commission.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Charles Clark. I'm the chair of the Tourism Advisory Commission. What I'm going to do is pass out an outline of the key points that I'm going to discuss. I'll give them to John here. Mark. Thanks, Mark.
You're getting better.
We keep passing. Of course, I echo the other commission's comment. I've been really fortunate. We got a super active committee and very good team to work with. I'm going to go through the major topics of discussion real quickly. Save the meat, which probably will be result in your questions from our recommendations made and some of our concerns. We had a pretty busy year. We have vetted and the submittal and the statistics are available for some of the events we participated in, like the Barbecue Festival final report, Arts is Alive Sports Festival final report. Our committee was represented at Glendale Convention and Visitors Bureau. We received numerous third-party partnership proposals during the year. Thunderbird Artists, Wham, Surprise Music Festival, Cancer Treatment Centers of America Tennis Tournament sponsorship for 2013 was a major topic of discussion in a number of our meetings. The Tourism Strategic Plan Initiative has been discussed, vetted, and over-discussed. Our Tourism Commission application process has been a point of discussion a number of times. That's continuing to be vetted and tightened up in its process. We have even had initial discussions about a spring training hotel shuttle to area restaurants and businesses and how something like that could possibly be funded. That was a real initial discussion, so we didn't get in a lot of detail. We have discussed a supplemental recommendation form for a tourism strategic plan budget. That would be a tourism strategic plan consultant who we would deploy to help develop a strategic plan for the city of tourism for City of Surprise. This consultant would help us formulate a longer-term development framework for tourism, 10 to 20 years, as well as short-term action plan for priority items. We have discussed the tourism component of the general plan in some detail. I think that you're probably aware and have written confirmation information regarding that. We have even discussed the increase in the hotel motel tax component, if applicable and necessary. That's been discussed numerous times. We have a 12-month event and festival calendar discussion. Recommendations that have been made to date this year by our committee. We've had a motion to recommend the council approve funds not to exceed $31,000 for one of our third-party event proposals. This was from Thunderbird Artists with an option for a second year. There's been a motion to approve funds for $10,000 for a third-party What's Happening Arts Movement organization participation. We've had a motion to recommend to council the approval of funds up to $20,000 for the first annual Surprise Music Festival. And the one that's, as I mentioned, had been discussed numerous times, we've had a motion to recommend council approval of funds not to exceed $100,000 to help complement this, our 5th annual Cancer Treatment Centers of America tennis event. Those are the recommendations. Concerns. I've made a little list of things that have been discussed at our meetings. Lack of City of Surprise Entertainment District. We've made note of that, but in concurrence with some of the other comments, we fully realize that some of these things that may have been discussed in a very vibrant 2007 are still lacking, not the fault of anyone's other than our general economy and our economic development wishes and aspirations. The lack of a citywide funding strategy to design and construct tourism infrastructure, complementing our existing sports tourism facilities, like our Surprise Recreation Campus, our tennis complex, youth baseball, soccer complex, and pickleball. This concern has been discussed numerous times in the meetings because we fully realize as a committee that the city has expended multi-millions of dollars on facilities that already exist. And why I list this concern, more than a concern, we see it as an opportunity. We're discussing almost meeting by meeting ways to complement some of these facilities that already exist, because as a tourism committee, our mandate is to increase tourism in the City of Surprise, and we've come fully to realize that facilities the city's already spent an awful lot of money on. If they had just the final dressing, it may well help our tourism goals quite a bit. I won't go into detail, but we'll take, for example, the Surprise Tennis Complex. I know that from the hotel industry standpoint and the tourism standpoint, tennis activities in our community create a lot of tourism. This has been a phenomenal March, and baseball in the tourism industry. The spring training season probably accounts for 20 or 25% of our hotel's revenues throughout the whole year. Not 1/12 at 8%, but probably closer to 25% of annual funding. However, having said that, we also fully appreciate that the tennis events that have been created to date also deliver tourism dollars and hotel stays and restaurant spending to the city. And having a little background on the tennis complex, just as an observation, completing some of the necessary facilities for us to compete for other types of events and USTA events would probably be real beneficial. That's why I list that as not so much as a concern, but an opportunity, and we're trying to address how to be a part of complementing that idea. City management delay on Tourism Commission approves Sports Village conceptual plan and feasibility study. We also realize that this is an opportunity, and maybe it's an opportunity that was addressed a few years ago when the economy was a little better. But again, we fully hope and realize that this will advance itself fully as the economy improves and our economic development efforts prove much more beneficial. The future CTCA tennis event and future growth of USTA tennis events, again, another opportunity that we've addressed, and we know that in this current environment that there's challenges or concerns that go with that opportunity. Another obvious concern, but a tremendous opportunity, is the Texas Rangers and Kansas City Royals lease contract. Of course, it expires, but not until 2023, but that'll come very quickly. So that observation will be on the mind of the Tourism Committee forever. It's such an important part of our tourism dollars. So those, very briefly, in a nutshell, are our activities. We've had a real active committee. We've got some challenges. We think we got a lot of opportunities, and we're just, as a committee, trying to work out ways that we can help participate. As you know, we're self-funded, meaning basically a voluntary addition to the hotel taxes funded the tourism committee. And please ask me.
Thank you, Charles. Are there questions or comments? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Charles, you guys do a great job, and you've got some real talent on that committee.
You're on it.
Well, I'm
Careful.
no, I'm not. I'm just an observer. But the 12-month event and festival calendar, what do we need to do to make that happen?
It's in the process right now.
Is it in the process, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on it. It's been discussed in the meetings, and Mark and his staff are helping, and we've had an outline. And I guess next stage up, we meet pretty much every month. Okay. So very shortly, you'll see it on an agenda item, and we'll quiz you.
I just didn't want you to get frustrated because that hadn't happened, you know.
No, it's happening.
Anyway. Now, the city management delay on Tourism Commission approved Sports Village and conceptual plan and feasibility study, that was a joint recommendation by you, the Tourism Board, and the CRS Board, right?
Yes, it was.
So both of you, we had two boards make that recommendation, and we didn't do it.
Well,
haven't done it.
Yeah, I think what happened was it was delayed, and I think part of the process in the delay was called economy shock.
Okay.
And we did get kind of hit in the middle, and it is an expense. So we're trying to figure out as a committee how we can advance that and still be pretty
But refresh my memory, Charles. I thought the Tourism Board committed bed tax dollars out of the budget for that.
I'm not sure that we.
That
I think
right,
we
Mark?
Did we approve it?
Yeah, and you guys approved it after CRS made the recommendation to you. Then you approved it, and it was coming out of bed tax dollars, and we as a city council sat on it for some reason. I don't know why, but we did, and I'm frustrated by that, and I just wanted to hear your point of view.
Okay, you kind of caught me. You're going to take the heat off our tourism commission and say we passed it on to the city council.
You did.
And it's
you did.
Okay, then.
Okay, and I just want to make sure it wasn't a budgetary constraint because it was coming out of bed tax dollars.
Okay, well, I better be vehement
so
about
I
it
just
in our next meeting.
I want to bring this up because it's a frustration not only of the tourism board but the CRS board, and I want to make sure that we as a council take another look at it in the. So Chris, okay.
Consider that direction, Mr. Hillman.
Anyway,
I actually would like to get a little bit better handle on when the two board recommendations came forward to the council. Do we have do we know what date that was?
Boy.
Been a while.
It was a year ago, wasn't it, Wayne?
Mark, you got a handle on that?
No.
Anytime you put our chairman and my boss on the line, I have to come up and explain. What transpired was a sports village concept that was to complement sports tourism.
Right.
Someplace in the city. And the tourism board, in partnership with the CRS board, decided to recommend to the city manager and then to council a study not to exceed $50,000 utilizing tourism tax dollars. After consultation with the city manager's office, Mr. Hillman, Mr. Mihalik, and then reporting back to the tourism board, Mr. Hillman was diligent that let us get through these audits, let us find out our financial situation. We don't want to come forth with a plan and then not have an opportunity to figure out how to make it a reality. So let's have timeliness here. And so the board has been very patient and understanding, and I think what the board has told us on a monthly meeting process is where are we at and how can we move this forward. Please talk to the city manager and ask him how far out we are so we can make this move forward. And per Mr. Hillman's direction, everyone was in concert with that. No one was frustrated. They certainly understood, and they're just waiting for a healthy financial report so we can move forward.
And so I'm glad you clarified that, because again, it's just another way of expressing the same identical frustration that every other board with a budget request has expressed with us this evening. And bottom line is, we all want to do good things, and all of us look forward to that. But we simply need to have sound financial underpinnings before we can move forward. But thank goodness we are spending the time needed to put together a really sound plan for how we move forward. The one thing that I do wonder if we could not move forward, though, Mr. Hillman, on the at least looking at that plan, that consulting fee that was set up for putting together that plan. I'm wondering if we couldn't at least move forward on that, because the whole idea is to find the plan. And ultimately, everybody's coming forward with plans, and we will end up having to prioritize. So that's why we're asking for the highest priority of each of these commissions, so that we can then prioritize them through the council as we build our budget. And again, nothing should be construed as an adoption, a wholesale adoption of all of the plans and the budget requests of the commissions. We're simply asking for their initiative, their ideas, and giving us a sound set of ideas and dreams so that we can find a way to make these things move forward.
Well, ours in one aspect is uniquely different from the other commissions. We have a funding mechanism, which is the voluntary increase in the bed tax that the hotels afford us.
Right.
And to that point, I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about that funding stream and what it really is. And I think that it would behoove all of us if we recognized exactly what that funding stream is, how it came about, and what it's dedicated for. That it's not a general fund component. It's not something that that we can. Well, we need to have a. I heard your disagreement, Councilmember Woodard, but I think that's the point. We need to make sure that we all understand how this thing came about and what we adopted as a council, because whether this is the right time to do that or not, I'm not sure, because we have a pretty full agenda and a lot of other discussion that needs to take place this evening. But I would like to have some clarity on that moving forward. I think it's only productive that we would have a fuller discussion about that funding stream and why it was adopted and what it's available for, so that there's clarity as we move forward in building the budget. So, Mr. Hillman, if you can help facilitate that discussion at a future workshop item, I would really appreciate it.
Just have a couple more things.
Yes,
real quick.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I think that needs to be clarified again. Totally agree. So everybody understands the genesis of it and what it's there for. Anyway, a couple of things, Charles, is the festivals. We've had 3 of them, and they were all inaugural, and there were mixed results. The barbecue festival, we ran out of barbecue at 3 o'clock because we didn't expect 8,000 people.
That was the good news.
We only expected 4. Anyway, but what we're not giving up on these festivals, right, Charles? That's part of the strategic plan, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We have, in concert with the goal of tourism, only thing we've done is continue to discuss tightening up the vetting process. The festivals, some have been, as you mentioned, this one was quite successful, anticipated 4,000 people, had 8. It's good when you run out of food, I guess. Not all events have been as successful as others. Most of the events that we've had are first-time events that we've funded speculatively, hoping that they would lead to annual events, to answer your question.
Right.
So, and we will, again, discuss them in the Tourism Commission each year as they make their application. Unfortunately, one of our better funded events was the Speed World funding that we participated in. Why I say it was one of the better funded, because we had very accurate statistics that could come back from Speed World and their sponsors that showed our actual, pretty close to giving us an idea of what our actual delivery of tourism was.
Right.
I think Speed World has since
I hear you.
changed.
Now, just the 5-year strategic plan that the Tourism Board did for 2010, 2015, now, is that being revisited? Are you updating that?
Yes.
Okay, good. When's the next meeting?
Next meeting is, Mark, do you know what's our official date for our next meeting?
April 10th?
Next Wednesday.
April 10th, okay, cool.
See you there.
Other questions and comments? No one? Okay. Thank
Thanks.
you, Charles.
Thanks very much.
Really appreciate your help.
Thanks, Charles.
Report. Thank you. The last on the list is youth, last but not least, is Youth Leadership Council.
Hello, Mayor and Councilman. I'm Austin Brace on the Youth Leadership Commission. And then, I don't know if you have copies of these or not.
Yes, we do.
Okay. And then these are 2 other commission members, Tiernan and then Victor.
Could you pull that microphone a little closer to you?
Can you hear me now? All right. And then, so far that we've done on the annual work plan is that we've been working on the strategic plan. I was not at the last meeting where we mainly finalized it. Then we also discussed outreach activities in the community for mainly aimed at teens for either recreation or volunteer opportunities. We've been in contact with Benavia about programs that they have. Some of the ones that we've been interested in is helping the elderly with technological difficulties they may have with computers or things.
I'd like to enroll in that program myself. How about you, Councilmember Wooding? Would you like to enroll in that program?
But we are a new commission this year of high school seniors around the school district, Dysart, and then private high schools. Also, we're in process of making a website or a social media web page to get ourselves known. Since we're a new commission, we want to get other teens interested in getting interviewed for this commission be here. The social media page would be free. Otherwise, we would link it to some of the other city websites. Also, long-term goals, we have general ideas like transportation, maybe a commuter bus or something like that for a long-term goal that could roll over to future commissions as a project for down the road. That's all the really things I have to add. Do you have anything?
Thank you. Members, do you have questions or comments?
I just have one, Mayor.
Member Hall?
When you say commuter bus, you mean like the circulator throughout Surprise that can move?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Because we've had a lot of teens. Well, a lot of teens say that they don't have rides. Some do not drive, and then they can't get to the places. So maybe one that stops at most of the high schools, and then by the Ultra Star or in the aquatic center, the library, just as a way of transportation, so they aren't stuck at home during summer or et cetera, et cetera.
Austin, do you guys have any budgetary
yes.
requests?
I'm sorry that I looked over that. All right. Budgetary requests. There's two requests that we have is $13,120 for the Youth Leadership Commission to go to the NLC conference in Washington, D.C., March of 2014. And then also a second budgetary request for $500 for shirts for the Youth Leadership Commission, worn by members for meetings and activities that we go to be identified by the community.
Any other questions, council members? Questions or comments? Gentlemen, thank you so much for for sitting through all the other reports as well. Thank you for being here. Sometimes when, you're at the end of the alphabet, and I know what that is, W, I know what it means to go last. So thanks very much for your patience and for your service to the city. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank you very much.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, you have all been very patient, and so have our bladders. So if you wouldn't mind, we would like to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and complete our business. I appreciate it. All right, we'll bring this meeting back to order, and the next item on the agenda, if you will read that.
This is discussion regarding donation from Surprise Pickleball Association for upgrading the current sports lighting at the Surprise Community Park pickleball courts.
Mr. Coronado.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Hillman. If I can invite Mr. Wong and Mr. Davis, they're tremendous advocates for this project. And I just want to go through a real, if I can, a real quick, and Mayor, for the record, you see how quick that PowerPoint was?
I saw that. I saw it.
Good. Several months ago, these gentlemen with the group of the Surprise Pickleball Association came to one of our meetings with Travis Ashby and myself, Donna Miller, and Tara Combs, and said, hey, we have another project. But it's a lot different than it was last year. We're not asking to come before you and to approve an improvement and so that we can start a campaign. They said, we have the money. We have up to actually twice as much as what we're going to spend, for the record. And I think at some time here in the near future, they want to come and talk to you about future pickleball expansion. But you see the yellow, that's where the pickleball facilities are today. And if any of you are driving down that road to the south on a very nice weathered morning, I can tell you that if we charge parking for all the golf carts, we would probably have a surplus in our community park parking lot revenues. Tremendous, tremendous turnout. I mean, Norm told me, Bill, that they will come. I used to go, prove it, Norm, prove it, and Stephen, and then they have proved it. The place is packed. Now, just basically, I'm not going to read through all of these, but we originally included the Surprise Farm scope of work for pickleball. It never has transpired. We presented to the advisory board on July 26th a donation of $25,000 to be converted to 8 pickleball courts. Basically, the lighting is not sufficient for pickleball, and I can explain that. The lighting they have tall poles. It's real simple, tall poles. And pickleball is not as high a trajectory sport as tennis is, so everything is a lot eye to eye, if you will. So they need the poles to be cut and the appropriate lighting to be in place. Quotes were requested. We received a quote from Pacific Coast for about $10,050. We'll bring that contract to you next week, working with Lindsay Duncan and her team to make sure there's a resolution and the authority to spend. Our recent conversion was in February of 2012. We've had 3 tournaments. I think these numbers are light. They've had 250 to 300 entries per tournament. 60% have been non-residents. They really believe the expansion of pickleball courts at a larger level, a higher level, will really bring an economic impact, a tourism impact to Surprise. Right now, the league is held with about 44 participants, but understand that's 44 per day. It doesn't count the whole season. Future plans for additional classes and leagues as we build momentum. What we're asking to do is cut off the 6 poles of 18 feet to install 5-inch arms on the exterior, install new lighting fixtures. It'll pay for a lift, material, labor cost, electrical and structural design. The quote does include tax. From our perspective in the CRS Recreation Advisory Board, Chairman Turner, this is a win-win. Once again, this is a tremendous opportunity from a group who's proactive in our community, not asking, hey, City Council, mayors, members of the council, mayor, we need this. Everyone needs a lot. But they have come up and once again said to us, we want to do this in the best interest of the city. And what's more appealing to me as a Parks and Rec director is they're not wanting to become a private club. This is a club for all the residents of Surprise, whether they belong to the association or not. They're looking to embrace and promote pickleball. This is a win-win, truly a win for our community, and we wanted to bring this forward. And I brought Mr. Davis to my left and Mr. Wong. If there's any questions, they would be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mark. And Mr. Davis and Mr. Wong, I want to thank both of you for your leadership on this issue. This has been, it started off a long time ago, didn't it, Norm? But, what I love about pickleball is I'm looking at Norm and Mr. Wong, and I'm looking at the spans of ages I'm looking at the spans of age groups that this sport can attract. That's what really, I think, is what makes this particular sport so special, is that it's not just a sport for those of us who live in active adult communities. It's a sport for all ages. And so that's what makes it particularly appealing for all the work that you've done to raise the profile of pickleball in Surprise. And it's kind of creating us to, we're kind of becoming the home of pickleball. And I know that's your goal and your desire and your dream. So thank you for putting your money where your mouth is and really stepping up and helping us create something really nifty and Surprise.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Wonderful partnership. Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, Mayor. This Bieber lighting, is it highly energy efficient, Norm? Is that the reason?
Yeah, the lights that are currently there are typical 1,000 watt lamps. The first problem is that they're just way too high. They're almost twice as high as they should be. So they need to come down, and there's a problem with the light distribution because there aren't that many light poles. So as a kind of a compromise, we said if we lower them and then double the number, we can use the old lights, complement them with more lights on the existing poles, and have a really significant improvement in the lights.
And we might not have much of a electrical movement on
No,
that,
the
right,
electric,
Mark?
the cost of doing the electrical work is included in the $10,000.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about the
And I think
utility.
we have enough power, talking to Mark's people, that there's enough electric power there to deal with it.
Councilman Hall, I think to answer your question, the technology that has come into sports lighting over the last decade is phenomenal.
Is it really?
Where once we could turn on a light pole and it would cost us $10 an hour.
Yep.
We can now actually turn a pole on at the entire 8 acres and it'll cost us $10 an hour for all 8 poles. So the technology, the efficiency, this all draws in line with your efforts and your initiatives for sustainability. It's a win-win. And so you will not see electrical bills go up. Actually, you'll see them go down. And as Ms. Lindsay Duncan is asking me, can you project that? I say, give me 12 months and I can give you an answer. Okay?
Gotcha. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Good job.
Any other questions or comments, council members? Thank you for your input. Thanks for your leadership, and we'll look forward to seeing this on our next agenda. Thank you so much.
I can just thank everybody else because
Excuse me, just a moment. Councilmember Woodard.
Yeah. Just a question. By Mark, can I assume that we know those are no longer used as tennis courts at all?
That is accurate, sir. That
Okay,
is
so
accurate.
we have 2 free tennis courts in the complex?
We do not have 2 free tennis courts, but we did make a commitment to you that if we had anyone from the public that would come to us and advocate for free tennis courts, that we would come to the city manager and look at a policy. We have had no one ask us for that free policy.
Okay.
If it's the will of the mayor and the council through the city manager, we're happy to do so, but we have not had that issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
can I just take a moment to thank Mark and his team and everybody, because I've met you, Mayor, a couple years ago when we did the grand opening and everything else, and Mr. Hillman. So really this has been a partnership for Surprise, and you know, we're working through hard times with financial budgets, but we want to see progress, and I think that's what we're about. We don't want any ownership or anything like that, but really we see the excitement. Norm's going to be the go-to guy with the art festival this weekend and teach kids pickleball and open the doors too. So things like that is really contributing to the community, and I just want to thank everybody, actually.
Thanks, gentlemen. Next item.
Review and discussion of a service agreement between the City of Surprise and Benavia.
Benavia here. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Mayor and Council, Roy and I have done a lot of work with Benavia, just really observing and watching them grow, and all the things they do with Community for All Ages and the farmers market and the community garden and all the rest of the things they do. And we just talked to Michelle about, Michelle, she's all about promotion. Let's get it on, And she kept coming to me and saying, why won't you guys promote this? Well, it's good for the city. It's good for the residents. And yeah, true. So out of this we talked to Chris, and Chris says, well, why don't we come up with a service agreement that all of us on the council could agree to, and then it lays out who does what, and we keep the cost at a minimum and build a lot of value for our residents. And so that's where we're at. So, Michelle, if you can shine some more light on it, I'd appreciate it.
Well, Mayor Walcott and council members and Mr. Hillman, thank you for having me here today to talk a little bit about Benavia and the service agreement. And to my left here is the chairman of our board at Benavia, Carol Struck, who is also a member, a resident of the city of Surprise. Benavia, as you know, was started over 32 years ago, originally in the Sun City area, but for many years we have served citizens from the city of Surprise back when it was just a square mile. We have provided volunteer services to the homebound elderly and disabled, and for years served in Happy Trails, continue to do that, Arizona Traditions, Sun City Grand, the original town site. We hit so many different areas. And one of the things I don't think people realize is the city of Surprise, just as it has grown, so has the demand for service. We started in 2010 a home-delivered meals program because we were getting a large number of residents from the city of Surprise that did not have someone to deliver hot meals to them that if they were homebound. And we were able to get a grant to start that program. And today we're delivering about 65 meals a day to residents in the community. In addition, we are very involved in an initiative called A Community for All Ages, which we did in partnership with the city of Surprise, along with Rio Salado College. And we've been doing this now for over 4 years. There's a lot of planning that went into it. It is truly community-driven. I have a number of I feel my colleagues in the community that work very closely with us to make sure that we're able to really do the things that they want to see in their community. So the community garden is one of the initiatives, and we're very excited. Everything over close to about $100,000 in donations came in for us to do that garden. It is a really special place. In addition, there are a number of residents that do gardening on a regular basis, as well as we have a local Girl Scout troop. The special needs high school students from the Dysart School District have a space, and a citizen from Surprise actually helps facilitate their garden. And we also have a farmers market that we've been doing for the last few years. And one of the things is we see this as assets to the community, but yet there isn't a way to get the word out other than if we send out a press release. Generally, people don't know that this exists. And so we were hearing even from people who were trying to find the community garden, they said, it took us forever to find it. So what we're asking for is, we are a human service organization that's here to serve the community. We were formed by the local citizens to serve the local citizens, and we continue to do that. We would like your support in enabling us to get the word out through the various means that the city has. And in turn, we would be happy to share with you, the number of volunteers that we have working with us from the city of Surprise. Last year, over 105,000 hours of service came from volunteers from the city of Surprise. So just that alone, it's about 1/3 of our total operation. So when you look at, and the number of people that we serve is about 1/3 for the total organization come from the city of Surprise. So we would like to have this agreement so that we will be able to also have fees waived when there are festivals or things that require some sort of fee to be able to do that event. It's just another way of giving back to the community.
Well, as a member of the board for several years, currently chair, I started out as a volunteer. I live in Sun City Grand, and I moved here after retirement, and 2 weeks later I thought, oh no, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So I found Benavia, and I've been there ever since. It's been so community-oriented. We've created some exceptional opportunities for people, and one person mentioned an entertainment area. Well, we have a little entertainment area at Benavia. We have Bert's Bistro with music on Wednesday and Friday nights, so you're welcome to come. So those are the kinds of things that we try to do for the community. And you throw in a community garden and all of the relationships we've had with Rio Salado College and the young people that have come to help us out. In fact, an earlier group mentioned us as well. So there are a number of things that happen, and Michelle couldn't be a better advocate for the City of Surprise. So we certainly hope you'll consider what we'd like to do as a partnership with you.
Council members, comments? Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. This is easy for me, and from my position, I mean, the service that you provide, what the community gains back is hundredfold to the investment that we would make in partnering with Benavia. So certainly look forward to a long-term relationship.
Villanueva?
Yes, just to echo John's comments, I really don't know what we would do without you with Benavia. The social services that they give, certainly the City of Surprise at this time cannot do that. So again, I want to thank you for your efforts in Benavia in the community and the community, the whole community as a whole, because I know it includes not only Surprise, it includes the different areas. So thank you again.
Councilmember Hall, did you have anything else? Councilmember Woodard.
I hesitate to bring this up, but probably my first 6 months on council, one of the things that I did was donate some of my district funds for directional signs to Benavia. I did, and I believe Councilman Villanueva and the mayor. Are these not adequate signs, or were they not placed, or just what?
Councilman Woodard, actually what we have there are signs. I want to say thank you first, because those were really helpful, especially when we first opened. And there is signage on Bell Road, but it highlights Benavia, and it doesn't say anything about the community garden or the farmers market, which are newly added services and assets that we've brought to the community. And it really, for the community garden side, it's really getting some directional signage for residents of Surprise to be able to find the community garden. So we're asking for help with that, as well as the farmers market, because people really want a farmers market in Surprise, but they don't even know that we have local farmers here doing this once a month. So that's what that's for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yondo.
I would want to first echo some of the things that were said earlier. You just have such a fine organization. It's a credit to you folks who run that organization, and does such a great benefit to this community. There's more of a technical question that I might even direct to Chris that goes through my mind. We've had some discussions recently in other contexts, not about Benavia, of trying to coordinate these kinds of requests, trying to see a way, because they're so legitimate, and yours is so legitimate, as Councilmember Williams said. This is an easy one for me too. But if there's a way for us to get that into the system, just as we're trying to do with all the boards and commissions requests, that way we wouldn't be dealing with this in isolation, then another organization would come forward with a request that we'd have to try to deal with in isolation. Again, that's what we attempted to do with the boards and commissions. get them into the system, and then council will have some funds that it can examine, and then council can make some decisions about the priorities for those funds. So if that's possible, because there's no, I guess there's no time urgency about having to make this decision right now before the budget process, I don't think, is there?
Well, the agreement would be helpful because we have a May Fair planned. It's a festival in the original town site on May the 4th. And we would like to be able to use the park, Bicentennial Park, along with Rio Salado College has already volunteered, and Benavilla. And we're going to have actually surprise police and fire will be there, crime prevention. We have a cooking demo at the Surprise Community Garden, and then we're going to have a lowrider car show and a BMX exhibition. I've had great help from the Parks and Recreation Department in putting this together.
I wonder if there'd be some way to work that specific thing out, and then look at the budget process, and then build this into the budget process long-term for a long-term service agreement.
Yeah, the only thing is, Jim, I understand what you're saying, but a lot of this is in kind.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, it's a public works employee putting up a banner, you know? Yeah. So it's kind of, that's a little different.
And that's why I think that some accommodations could easily be made for the events that are coming up very soon, and then work out the details of the specifics of more of a sustaining long-term service agreement. That's all I'm suggesting.
We really have already established a kind of a practice of that, because we've had several requests in this last year for in-kind services, whether it's Relay for Life or for WHAM. And so I think it would be helpful if we make certain that we accommodate the urgent need, right? So that we make sure that we're doing the same for you as we have done for these other nonprofits. But long term, I think it would be helpful if we kind of create a process where we can evaluate each of these, because you know, I talked about this earlier. There are people who are not getting service, and there are some people that are not getting service that don't even know that a service exists. And so it's trying to match up the need with the 501 or the nonprofits that are providing those services. And so I really think that Benavilla has been such an important part of that human component of our community, that we need to find a way to partner more directly with them. But there are other nonprofits that have equally compelling stories to tell. And so I want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. So Mr. Hillman, is there a way that we can accommodate the immediate request for this May 4th event?
Yes, there are a couple ways I think you would want to go about this. First, relative to some of the council and the mayor's comments on a long-term solution. Next week, we're going to be discussing in talking with the council about expanding and revamping. A possible solution is expanding and revamping your current community outreach, agenda, or line items. Through what staff is proposing for your consideration, through really a grant process that structures not only the any potential cash outlay that the city would make to any one of these 501(c)(3)s, but would also be able to manage these in-kind donations. Currently, the way you've managed that is really in two different ways. First is you do a sponsorship. We would sponsor this event. It's usually a one-time thing. I think Relay for Life is a good example of that, where you have an event coming up. Here is the in-kind sponsorships that the city's willing to do. That has come before council, and you've approved that. And there's always been values per the council request on what those costs are. You've also handled it through your community outreach line item. You've actually given cash. So you've had two different ways that you've been able to help and to assist these nonprofits. What staff's going to be presenting to you are some ideas relative to this grants process that really structures it. It creates parameters. It creates an opportunity for a review and a recommendation, from potential committees that you guys would create to help vet and rank and prioritize all of these different areas. It would help with the calendaring of all of these events. It would be part and parcel with the budget process. So as we look at each one of these different potential requests, we can put those on the calendar. Staff can be staffed up, so it all becomes inclusive. That's sort of the long-term potential consideration council may have for this. For a short-term component, what I would recommend for the May 4th Mayfair is maybe getting the quick list of what they would look for.
Yes.
We can get that to what we've done before, just in a sponsorship component. Here is the list. Here are the in-kind contributions, and we can pound that out really fast and get that to council next week.
Good.
It might be, as you talk about the recommendation from staff on how to address these ongoing because the Relay for Life, it's going to continue every year. We're going to probably continue to receive that request from that group and others, and so perhaps there's a way of looking at the program that you're setting up so that one's a sponsorship component and one is more of a longer term over a full year's worth of activities that might be included. And I want to find a way to make sure that we're open, we're fair, we're responsive, and we're making sure that we can accommodate a lot of these requests. But we all know that we're not going to accommodate everyone. But at least if there's a process that brings everybody on board and they go through a process, it might even lead to partnerships. There might be a grant request that is a grant request from Benavia/WHAM. It just might be an opportunity to try to pair up different groups to get a greater bang for the buck. So
some of the ideas that staff has been mulling over that we'll be presenting to you, allow for that to just that type of flexibility. Again, what our goal is just to bring some ideas, some creative solutions that would help. Again, create that structure, that we'll be talking about next week, and so it can be very flexible.
And we all know that the more requests that we've made, these in-kind solutions, they have a cost. They have a cost to the bottom line. And one of them is in our communications. And I think that's one of the reasons why you brought that up, Councilmember Hall, is it really does stress our communications staff to be able to accommodate some of these things with the website and with advertising and those kinds of things. So we're going to have to figure out how we can build that into that component into the budget. So again, you are wonderful. You represent a wonderful organization that provides such incredible service to the citizens, and it shouldn't be a secret. It should be well known and well advertised and well used. And it's a wonderful partnership. So we appreciate you bringing this forward, and I'm looking forward to sitting down with you and talking more about the May 4th, because I'm very interested in all that you've got going. I'm thinking about another partnership that we might be able to dream.
Yeah, that's great. And I only want to stress the importance of having the residents be able to find wayfinding in the city, how you find your local surprise community garden. I mean, that I'm hearing from residents that is an issue, and so however we could help that process would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Mayor and Council. I just want to make sure that we can get that contract to you in time to get it approved at the next regular council meeting, and to do that.
No, I think
I think Misty brings up a great point. Let's just for point of clarification, let's make sure that as staff that we're moving in the direction that the council would like. For next week, what we'd like to do is just come together, and show what for the May 4th event, what the sponsorship request would be from Benavia over to the city, and we'll get that list over to the council for your review, so then you can take action, I believe via resolution, I believe is the way we've managed these before, of a sponsorship of the May 4th event. At that same meeting, we'll also be discussing, these ideas for the new grants program that can allow for, the in-kind donations or the cash, transfers, et cetera, over to help out anything in particular. At that point, the council then can make a decision if they would like to, encourage Benavia to go through that grants process, or if the council would still like, they could then enter into a, contractual relationship. So first step would be, let's just get the May 4th event taken care of. Exactly. Then as a council, you can decide how you may want to manage, the ongoing, relationship with Benavia relative to these other issues, signage, fees, et cetera, either through the grants process or through a formal contract.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm understanding? Would that be appropriate?
That's certainly what I was trying to describe. Is certainly you captured our hearts about the whole thing, let alone the May 4th event. So whatever we can do to make sure that May 4th event gets addressed, and then develop the rest of the system for it beyond that point, and it may very well be through the grants program.
But Chris, I want to remind you, it took us a couple of years to hang art in the city hall. I don't want this to go on forever. I'm telling you.
We will have the sponsorship.
I want this coming back. I want it defined so that we can make a decision as a body and move on. Because, you know what I'm saying?
Understood. And I think after next week's, you'll really have the option. So with Benavia in particular, you can just say, okay, staff, with Benavia, we would like to move this direction. And if it's still a contractual relationship, we have everything prepared and we'll move forward.
And that grant, and you committed to me that grant would be 1 page.
Yeah, the application form. I'm going to look up to Jeff and Jay and everybody else. Keep it simple on the application. So, and we can talk all about that next
Okay,
week.
perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so
very
much,
much,
Mayor and
Council.
council
Thank you
members.
very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Next item.
Presentation and discussion regarding transportation projects and activities affecting the city.
Aaron and Mr. Hazlett, welcome.
Well, what's the score?
Rockies are tied 4-4, and the D-backs are beating the Cardinals, which I'm not excited about.
Madam Mayor and council members and Mr. Hillman, thank you for having us here tonight. This is the third of our quarterly briefings on transportation, and I'll try and make it quick. We have a fair amount of information to cover. One thing I did want to point out is you have a cheat sheet. This is something that we'll be updating and providing you with on a regular basis. And what this does is provide very summary information about different transportation projects that are going on in and around Surprise, but that are being conducted by the city and by other agencies. So I won't spend a lot of time going through this, but if you've got any questions about it, please let me know. If there are projects that you've got questions about, let me know. And if there are others that you think are missing and need to be included on here, just let me know. We'll be updating this every month. So tonight, we're going to talk about transportation planning. Can you double click on that?
Yeah, there you go.
Unfortunately, it doesn't lend itself to lots of pretty pictures, but just bear with me and we'll try and get through this. And it's a very important activity. It's where transportation issues are identified, where funding is identified, and funding's allocated for transportation needs. So what I want to spend a little time on tonight is just a brief reminder about why we need long-range transportation planning, a little bit of information about transportation finance in Surprise, and then focus on the 3 projects that are selected for tonight: ADOT's long-range transportation plan, the regional transportation plan, which is why I asked Bob Hazlett to join us tonight. He's a senior engineer with MAG and is responsible for leading the regional transportation planning effort. And then I was going to talk about the City of Surprise Transportation Plan, but I think I'll save that for the next quarterly briefing and can go into more detail about it then. So why do we need long-range transportation plans? They're sometimes difficult to do, sometimes controversial, they're time-consuming, but they're very important. The transportation system represents a tremendous investment by both the public and private sector, and it's something that we really need to plan out and deal with transportation needs that are substantial and changing due to the way people travel, due to changes in the transportation system and the way people use that. Growth will occur. We're seeing an increase now in permits and activity in the Community Development Department. And the forecasts for Surprise talk about doubling of population over the next 20 years, and our transportation system simply can't handle that. Transportation improvements typically have a very long lead time. You just have to look at SR 303 and recognize that it's been decades in the planning and design and construction, and now we're finally approaching the end of that. In the end of 2014, we'll have new freeway in the 303 corridor. Transportation investments done strategically can really help support land use and economic development decisions and support the goals of the city that have been outlined in the strategic plan and other plans, including the general plan update. And then finally, our resources are limited, and we don't have nearly enough funds to address all of the transportation needs that we have, so we need to make clear decisions about what our priorities are and how we're going to implement the transportation improvements that we need. So transportation finance and Surprise, in a very short session, large amounts of money are involved in this. The transportation budget for the current budget is somewhere around $9 million. That's a lot of money for the city of Surprise to spend. We need to establish clear priorities for how that money should be spent and invest strategically. And we also need to be able to leverage our local resources to bring in regional, state, and federal resources to help deal with transportation problems that we have in the city that really are the result of things that are happening in the region. So regional partnerships are key, not only to address specific transportation problems, but also to come up with viable financing strategies, whether they're on a state level or our regional level, to help deal with the transportation issues that the city of Surprise faces. Revenue sources for the city come from 6 major sources. The highway user revenue funds is basically the state gas tax and vehicle license fees that are collected at the state level and returned to local jurisdictions based on population. Local Transportation Assistance Fund is LTAF. That's generated through the lottery and is provided for transit within the local regions, again distributed in relationship to population. The roads of regional significance involves the local impact fees that the city of Surprise has imposed. Not a large source of funding, but it's there to help deal with transportation needs created by growth. The Transportation Improvement Fund involves the tax on local construction that's been set aside to deal with roadway improvements needed to support growth. And then we have transit fares, again, not a large source, but an important source to help support dial-a-ride, and then vehicle license tax, which is also collected at the state level and distributed back to local jurisdictions. This chart shows revenues by source over the last several years, and you can see revenues in the good times peaked in 2007, somewhere in excess of $21 million coming in that year. And a big part of that was the Transportation Improvement Fund, which was reflective of the construction that was going on at that time. You can see that the revenues have declined significantly through 2010 and remain somewhat flat, and a little bit of increase in the last couple of years, due primarily to HERF funds. Those are state funds, and the vehicle license tax. So on the other side is transportation expenditures, and there are about 8 different funds that are tracked separately for transportation expenditures. I thought this would be an easy question to answer when I first asked the question about what do we spend on transportation in a year, but it turns out it's not quite that simple. HERF funds are tracked separately by three different categories: for street operations, traffic engineering operations, and pavement preservation. Then the transit fund is tracked separately, which is funding for the 571 route as well as the dial-a-ride. And then capital funds from other sources are tracked for streets, traffic engineering, capital. And then the park and ride lot was tracked separately, which was regional, I believe, RTP funds from Prop 400.
Correct.
This shows expenditures over from 2008 through the projected budget in 2013, and it doesn't exactly track with when revenues came in because of differences in cash flow and when projects are implemented. But we peaked in 2009, and then have expenditures have been cut approximately in half for transportation purposes, and we have virtually no capital projects and not much in the way of pavement preservation, although it was doubled in the last budget. So there are a number of issues that result from this. Declining revenues from traditional sources like the gas tax. The federal gas tax is 18.4 cents and hasn't been increased since 1992, I believe. The state gas tax of 18 cents a gallon was last increased in 1990, so we're not keeping up with the costs of inflation and have declining revenues. And another complication with this is that the fleet's becoming more efficient, so people can basically consume more of the transportation system for the same dollar, which puts a lot of stress on the transportation system and the financing of the transportation system. Because of declining revenues at the state and federal level, we have greater reliance on local and regional funding. Things like Proposition 300, Proposition 400, local funds like the Transportation Improvement Fund, and so on. There are questions of equity, who pays versus who benefits from the expenditures on transportation. We have an aging infrastructure that is in need of major repairs. We have freeways that were built decades ago that are really in serious conditions, as well as local streets that need maintenance and resurfacing. We have increasing costs due to inflation, due to increased design standards, impact mitigation, a number of other factors. And we also have an increasing emphasis being placed on alternatives to the private automobile, like bicycling and transit and pedestrians. And funding for these travel modes is even more restricted than what we see for roadways. I want to focus on the state transportation plan. This was adopted by the Arizona State Transportation Board in November of 2011 and covers a 25-year planning horizon. And this is a statewide transportation plan. One of the things that they identified in this plan was about $89 billion worth of needs over the next 25 years in order to meet the performance standards that have been adopted for the state transportation system, but they've only identified $26 billion in revenues over that same time period. That's assuming continuation of existing revenues, no major new sources of revenue. So we've got a huge gap at the state level. This plan was developed through and will be modified and updated through a continuous process of planning, implementation of projects, preservation of the system, and feedback about what needs to be changed in the plan. It was developed in partnership with local agencies and the general public and the business community. And it's strategic in nature, and by that I mean it doesn't really identify a specific list of projects with dollar amounts associated with it. It's to provide guidance on investment types and investment strategies as opposed to a list of individual projects which are programmed through the state's capital improvement program. It documents existing conditions and future trends that would affect transportation in the state. It defines goals, objectives, and performance measures so that you can see how well the system is operating and whether or not the investments are helping you achieve the goals that you've established. It incorporates the 2050 BQAZ, which is Better Quality Arizona planning process that began in the mid-2000s, and a number of framework studies have been done under that umbrella, including the Hacienda framework study, which identifies transportation improvements for the West Valley. It recognizes ADOT's evolving role from a highway department to a multimodal transportation agency and provides strategic direction to guide investments. I mentioned that the future needs exceed the revenues that are anticipated. The plan is fiscally constrained. It's based on the $26 billion of revenue. It does focus on implementation and establish something that they refer to as the recommended investment choice. And this was developed using the baseline projection of $26 billion, and it shows where the priorities are in financing for transportation at the state level. And you'll see that highway preservation is a little over a third, highway modernization is about 29%, and highway expansion is less than a third of the transportation investments. So they're moving from a department that constructs new facilities to a department that has maintenance and preservation and modernization of the existing facilities, as opposed to expansion of the system, even though there are needs throughout the state for expansion of the system. Turn it over to Bob at this point.
Okay, let's see if we can pull this up here. Well, good evening. Again, my name is Bob Hazlett. I'm Senior Engineering Manager with the Maricopa Association of Governments. I have a fair amount of information to present to you, but I'll do my best to be as quick and to the point. And more than anything else, thanks for having me here to present. Like Karen was talking about, some of the stuff sounds a little bit bleak in terms of transportation and transportation planning. I would like to at least give Mayor and the council a update on what we've been doing regionally and how we've been moving forward and being as best stewards as we possibly can with the Proposition $400. Before I get into that, I just want to take a few moments here just to kind of give you this spot brought to you by, just so if you're not certain of who MAG is and what we are actually a 3-in-1 organization. We are a council of government under Arizona law. We are a metropolitan planning organization under federal law, and then we're also a transportation management area under federal law as well. And all of these give us certain powers to be able to do transportation planning. And we're supposed to do it, and we always do it in a cooperative manner and collaborative manner with all of our partner agencies, which includes all of our member agencies, which the City of Surprise is a member of the Maricopa Association of Governments. Our policy structure all focuses upon our regional council, which consists of 25 elected representatives, 1 Maricopa County supervisor, members from 3 Native American communities, 2 state transportation board representatives, and the chair of the Citizens Transportation Oversight Committee. Mayor Wolcott, you represent the City of Surprise on this regional council. We have policy committees that feed up. I think the most prominent one is the Transportation Policy Committee. This is a very unique committee in terms of how it plays out and how it helps us guide us in terms of making transportation decisions for the region. This committee, as you can see there, that's our decision process that we have. Is really unique in that it is not just consist of just elected officials, but it also includes private citizens that represents varying parts of the transportation industry. This is our decision process. If anyone was ever wondering how we make a decision on transportation, there are a number of committees that feed to the Transportation Review Committee, and right now I think Mr. Terry Lowe, your interim Public Works Director, represents the city on that committee. And then it goes to our Management Committee, which Mr. Hillman is a part of, to weigh in on the decision, then on to that Transportation Policy Committee I just talked about, as well as MAG Regional Council, and Mayor Wolcott represents the city on both of those efforts. Throughout our decision process, we have a defined citizen stakeholder comment process where whenever we are working on transportation decisions, we follow up a very prescribed process that helps us identify what those decisions are and where we move forward on the transportation plan. All of these kind of lead to what are the 3 core documents that really define our agency. The first one being the Regional Transportation Plan, the next one being the Transportation Improvement Program, and then lastly the Conformity Analysis. The Regional Transportation Plan, I see you smile on that one, Mayor. The Regional Transportation Plan is really our sole and probably our core mission more than anything else. When metropolitan planning organizations were contemplated by the federal government back in the 70s, it was all geared towards looking at the transportation plan and what is it that the local entities want to see for their transportation services and facilities throughout their region. And so our document, its current generation, was adopted by Council in November of 2003. It has been adopted updated several times since then. In fact, there's a current update that's going through Council right now. But work is beginning on what we call our next gen regional transportation plan, and I'll talk about that at the conclusion of my presentation. The next document is a transportation improvement program, much like your capital improvement program. It pretty much specifies a 5-year what the roadmap is for all of the transportation projects, and it's wrapped up into the statewide transportation improvement program, otherwise known as a STEP. and approved by the governor or her designee, which is the executive director of the Arizona Department of Transportation. And then last but certainly not least is our air quality conformity analysis. It ensures that the program is within the air emissions budgets that are allowed for the valley. MAG is the lead air quality planning agency, but we do a lot of that work with the Maricopa County Air Quality Board, as well as with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, ADEQ. And so those are our three main documents that we have here. Let me focus a little bit about our regional transportation plan as it stands right now. Like I said, this current generation was adopted by council in November of 2003. It served as the entire foundation for the Proposition 400 vote that happened in November of 2004. And how that plan is divided out is into those percentages that you see there. About 57% of it goes to the freeway program, 32% goes to the regional transit program, another 9% goes to the arterial program, and then 2% goes to other programs to help MAG and ADOT manage the entire program. These are the current funding allocations that we have here. Drilling down to the freeway program, which is a lot of my personal responsibility, this is the biggest part of it outside of transit in terms of the things that are happening in the valley. It's a $10.5 billion program over 20 years, and it brings up new freeway corridors, including Loop 303 that Karen had just identified. It brings out State Road 24 out in the East Valley, which is the Williams Gateway Freeway. And then also South Mountain Freeway is also included in that. Those are the major facilities that have been identified. And then there's a whole host of other things, including US 60 Grand Avenue improvements, and also the Bell and Grand intersection grade separation is also included as part of the Regional Freeway and Highway Program. But as we move forward and we started getting into the details of things, revenues, as Karen had shown for the City of Surprise, kind of caught up with the program. And then on top of that, we also had a number of other things that hit us too, like inflation on construction costs, and then also a lot of scope changes and material cost overruns that our program ended up ballooning from $10.5 billion to about $15.8 billion. Back in 2009, we started counting all of the revenues that we had, and we only had revenues for about $9.2 billion, which meant that we had a $6.6 billion deficit. And with that $6.6 billion deficit, we had to do a rebalancing program to help get the program back in line. And what that meant is that we had to add money to some critical projects, Loop 303 being one of them. We added about $800 million to that budget. And then also Loop 202 South Mountain, another $800 million was added to that budget because of some cost overruns, design overruns. So we went ahead and put that in there. But we had to defer some very critical projects. It's identified on this map as State Road 801. It is now labeled as Arizona State Route 30. But we had to defer a number of projects so that we could get the project in balance. Now, when we defer them, they did not leave the regional transportation plan. They're just deferred to an unfunded phase and identified as illustrative corridors, which means we still do the planning for them and we still move forward with those operations. Move forward about 3 years to 2012. We did another rebalancing effort. We found we were short about another $300 million, which brings the total to almost about $7 billion that we had to remove from the program. And we went through a rebalancing exercise there. What was interesting about this rebalancing effort, though, is that we changed some priorities around on Loop 303. Instead of adding a fifth and sixth lane on Loop 303 between Grand Avenue up to I-17, it was decided to go ahead and add Loop 303 south of Interstate 10 back into the program because that was an area that was seeing a lot of economic growth. In fact, that's the warehousing area for Goodyear. And in fact, Macy's just announced a major expansion down there, and then I believe Amazon's about ready to make some announcements down there as well. And so it was felt that from economic development standpoint to go ahead and put that back in the program. We did a lot of traffic analysis and found out that even though we took lanes away from Loop 303 up north, it still held through 2026 horizon, meaning that it was able to accommodate the demand that we had there. But we also took some money off of Interstate 17. Roughly about $1 billion was identified for that corridor, and we had to remove some funding from that because no project has really been specified there yet. But it also, too, there's some other complications that have hit out as well. Anyway, despite all that, there's been a lot of construction. I'm certain you've seen a lot of that, and these are a lot of the projects that have been done since the Prop 400 took effect in 2006. You see some of the big accomplishments being the 13 miles of new freeway for Loop 303, 31 miles of new HOV lanes on Loop 101. In fact, we now have HOV lanes on all of Loop 101, all 61 miles of it. Some new HOV lanes on Loop 202. Direct HOVs, that's what DHOV stands for, that are in the traffic interchanges. We added those in. And in fact, with the additions of all those HOV lanes, the Phoenix metropolitan area has the 4th largest HOV lane network in the nation. So we're really pushing the envelope there in terms of ride sharing and providing better opportunities for that. And then, of course, the last big project that you see there is the widening of Grand Avenue to 6 lanes from 83rd Avenue to Loop 303. There's a lot of stuff under construction, especially Loop 303 in and of itself. The official title is by 2015, but more than likely it seems like that'll probably get built by 2014. And then the US 60 reconstruction, the rehab that's going on between 83rd Avenue all the way into downtown. Now, there are a number of planning efforts that are underway and things that we continue to keep our eyes on. Interstate 11 is stuff that a lot of folks have heard about. Congressional designation came down for the section of US 93 between Phoenix and Las Vegas to be turned to Interstate 11, but there's no funding on that. But at least we got the designation, so at least gets us in the ball game on Interstate 11. As you can see, there's a lot of studies that are underway. ADOT and the Nevada DOT have a study underway. If you go to I11corridorstudy.com, more information can be done on that, and expected completion is by 2014. But what I think is really amazing about this corridor is that when you look at it, we kind of think of it as America's next trade corridor, especially because when you look, we have great east-west movements in Arizona, but we really don't have good north-south movements, and that's what I-11 would provide for it. And then that picture you see there is yours truly and a couple people. Mayor Wolcott, they were there when Governor Brewer unveiled that. Those are the signs that are going to be going up along US 93 to show that we are serious about Interstate 11 moving forward. MAG commuter rail studies, those 3 studies have been completed, an overall strategic plan, as well as the development plan for the UP-Yuma line, as well as the development plan for the BNSF Grand Line. And then also ADOT has their intercity rail that's under consideration. All the commuter rail stuff is incorporated in the regional transportation plan as an illustrative corridor. And what that means is that we continue to plan for it, we continue to look for it, but it doesn't mean that there's any funding for it. But it allows us to be able to keep those as placeholders in the plan so that as we move forward in terms of transportation planning, we know that those projects are there and we know that that stuff is available for us, and it helps us guide development questions that often come up for regional matters. Another study that's recently been done is called the Sustainable Transportation and Land Use Integration Study. We short-term that to called St. Louis. You'll see at MAG we have nothing but a bunch of acronyms, and that's one of them. But this one has been helping us out in terms of working with high-capacity transit opportunities. A regional transit framework study was completed and identified more than 44 different corridors that we could have for high-capacity transit throughout the valley. Now, the chances of us getting all 44 corridors are probably not that great. In fact, if you look at the Chicago metropolitan area and its size of roughly about 11 to 12 million, and we're planning for an area of 8 million, they only have about 20 high-capacity corridors at the most. And so what this study was meant to do was meant to help us and help our member agencies try to figure out where are the best high-capacity transit corridors. And to help us out, you can see there that there's some place types that have been identified to help us figure out what we need to get in place in certain corridors that will allow them to be successful with high-capacity transit. They're not necessarily kind of grading them or saying, no, you can't go down that path, but they're meant to help us figure out what makes the most sense in terms of when we look at high-capacity transit, whether that's light rail, commuter rail, or even heavy rail, which would be subways and stuff like that, that would help us at least figure out what makes the most sense and what would give us the biggest bang for our buck. Now, some of that has been applied forward to a study that's been underway for a couple of years. This is outside of the city of Surprise, but it does have some direct application to the city of Surprise, and that's looking at the Central Phoenix Transportation Framework Study. This study is about to render a lot of its recommendations, but I put this in here mainly because I wanted you to see this word cloud that was done. And this was a survey of almost about 3,000 people inside of Loop 101 that says, okay, give us your transportation ideas. What are your best thoughts? What are your best ideas? And the bigger the word means the more it was identified. And you see which word is up there, transit. That's what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for those types of services. They want that to help accommodate the transportation demand. The next biggest words are road, rail, need, and system. I think a lot of times we always think about our corridors as being individual points, but when you look at it from a valley-wide perspective, they all feed to a major system, and that's the thing that I think a lot of folks want us to look at. We had a charrette for the Central Phoenix study, and you can see on this map there were a lot of recommendations that came out. I mean, I can't begin to go over the almost 350 different recommendations that came out of this. Right now, our consultant is kind of going back, sifting through this and trying to prioritize them for us. But they have recommendations for transit, pedestrians, bicycles, arterials, and freeway opportunities that would help us in terms of planning for the next generation regional transportation plan. The next study I want to highlight is what's happening along Interstates 10 and 17. Now, granted, that does not touch the city of Surprise, but it does influence the city of Surprise because I-10 and I-17 form what we call the spine. Most all transportation passes into that or out of that for the entire region. And we have roughly about $1.5 billion of RTP funding identified for the spine. We had some environmental impact statements underway, but both of them have been suspended, mainly because we were running into some issues with Sky Harbor Airport. Right now, where 10 and 17 come together on the south side of downtown, it is in some airspaces. And those airspaces are going to be some very expensive fixes. In fact, the Federal Aviation Authority administration has already told us that if we touch that interchange, you break it, you buy it. And it would be some pretty expensive fixes. And so we're right now trying to figure out, we need some relief to the spine. We got to figure out some spot improvements, but we need to figure out what we can do leading up to that split interchange because, again, any kind of split at that one, it means a major reconstruction of that entire traffic interchange. Right now, MAG, ADOT, and Federal Highway are working to do an environmental study in 30 months to try and identify what those opportunities are. The reason we're making this fast track, there's already a lot of information that's been collected on the other EISs, but the other part of it is it all feeds up into our regional transportation plan, and we just want to make certain that we've got all that information. The last study I really want to focus on, I cannot not talk about, is a study that I manage called COMPASS, the Corridor Optimization Access Management Plan and System Study for US 60 Grand Avenue. This is the first of several COMPASS studies. There's one, in fact, getting launched now on 99th Avenue between Olive all the way down to Buckeye Road over through all those communities that was initiated by Avondale. But this study, I think, is an amazing opportunity because, yes, it's been studied to death. Yes, there have been 54 projects that have been done and documented since 1998. But what's been interesting is that there's been a lot of change, I think, of heart of what is happening with Grand Avenue. If you go back to the mid-'90s and you go back to Proposition 300, Grand was supposed to be a freeway. Well, that kind of devolved out when Governor Simonson took it out of the program. And so we got this expressway/grade separation focus that we have on the corridor right now. But we think that Grand could be a lot more. We've taken a look at other corridors that are similar Grand-like around the country, and what we're finding out is that you can really turn this corridor around and make it a catalyst for economic development. If all we do is just add capacity to that corridor, you're just going to create bigger parking lots and the land uses aren't going to change. But if there's some ways that we might be able to change that up a little bit, and you can kind of see that by looking at these 4 concepts that we presented to the charter partners, which are the mayors that are in the corridor, along with the supervisor for this area. I'm forgetting his name right now. No, Mr. Wilson has stepped down. Hickman, thank you. I should remember that. Hickman's eggs. But anyway, we presented this to them. They like this. And again, there's no place like Grand. Grand is a corridor that, if you think about it, it's the only place in the valley that this study at least touches 6 city centers. No other corridor does that. And so with 6 city centers and with 6 downtowns of activity happening, we should be able to do something to change this around. The website, us-60compass.azmag.gov, is available for folks to look at. Well, that's just a smattering of a few projects. Karen had talked about the BQAZ, the Building Equality Arizona Initiative, that launched the Hassayampa and Hidden Valleys framework studies. There were a number of projects that were identified there. We've been busy with a number of other things, the Regional Transit Framework Study I talked about, design accessible transit communities, and then also, too, our Managed Lane Study. I didn't put that in here tonight for brevity's sake, but we are actually taking a look at maybe bringing some reliability back to the system. We have a number of other projects that are underway. Southwest Valley Transit, Northwest Valley Transit. We just completed a major investment study for the Southeast Corridor. The Carefree Cave Creek study, say that fast 5 times, is just getting underway. And then also, too, in fiscal 2014, we're going to be looking at Southeast Valley Transit and also looking into a new area that MAG has taken into its boundaries in Pinal County. It's part of our contiguous urban area, and we're going to be taking a look at that. A lot of recommendations are coming through. I just presented part of that $89 billion, I think, that Karen had highlighted as part of this, the statewide transportation study. But as she has identified, there are a lot of funding realities. I want to talk about our 3 main pots that we look at, and I'll talk first about federal transportation funding. This is the scary one for us in a lot of respects, because up until the mid-'90s, we were really, whatever was taken in the gas fund, or pardon me, into the gas tax, and you can see there it's 18.4 cents per gallon, hasn't been raised since 1992. It's 24.4 cents for diesel. Up until recently, whatever that fund generated paid for whatever was needed by the nation for its transportation services. It's only been recently that the general fund has had to come and shore up the Highway Trust Fund. And when that happens, that means that we are now subject to the whims of Congress and the administration as to transportation and its priorities, which is really kind of amazing. There is no push for anybody to do anything about transportation funding, whether it's raising the gas tax or whether it's doing anything else at the federal level. But as you can see there, the Congressional Budget Office says that we're going to be $92 billion short, and that means we're up to the whims of Congress in terms of helping fund our facilities. The Highway User Revenue Fund that Karen talked about, it's the 18-cent gas a gallon for motor fuel, 26 cents for gasoline, for diesel, and then also, too, it also includes the vehicle license tax as well. What's interesting about this one is that our legislature has done a pretty good job of rating this fund. Now, technically, they can't do it, but they were able to figure out how to do it by not posting the proceeds into the fund until they were ready for them to be processed into the fund, because according to state law, they can only divert $20 million out. But as you can see by that middle chart, they went as high as $150 million, and it looks like for this coming fiscal year, it's going to go almost to $200 million, which is a $7.5 billion cost to HERF. And that $7.5 billion cost to HERF is not just to ADOT, it's also to the cities as well, because half of that goes to the cities. And so that's what's been happening there. The other thing that Karen had talked about is absolutely true. The fuel economy standards, we're supposed to go to 54 miles per gallon by 2025. That's eating away at it. Also, too, if you drive an alternate fuel car, I'm happy for you, but you don't pay any roadway taxes at all. Unfortunately, we can't collect any money on that. And then there's also been reduced driving because of gas prices. Our VMT is down. And then, like I said, the VLT, people are just not buying cars. They're holding on to them a lot longer than they have been. So we have that going on. Let's go to the next bit of good news. The Regional Area Roadway Fund. This is the half-cent sales tax that's been collected. And this is what kind of contributed to us having to do the rebalance on the program. As Karen identified, we had a peak back in 2007, and it dropped right after that. That was the first time ever in Maricopa County since they started collecting taxes, sales taxes back to the 40s, where revenues actually declined. Our current projection right now is that we're going to be about $6 billion shy in the entire program. And that has been accounted for in our rebalancing, so hopefully we don't have to rebalance again. But the point is, though, is that it is kind of bleak. And so where do we stand? Right now, we've had more than 16 significant planning projects throughout the region that have presented outcomes that are consistent with current regional thinking. And what I mean by that is that the highway construction side of it is that people still want to see a few things happen, but they're more interested in looking at transit, because transit seems to be a major success. There's also new economic direction that I think we're looking at, and the focus on freight and goods movement. In fact, we've completed a freight framework study, and I would invite the mayor and council and Mr. Hillman that we had a freight framework study done. I know you've seen many presentations on that might be something worthwhile for your council to see, because it's really kind of seeing what we can do with transportation and how we can kind of focus that in there. But there's funding uncertainties. I think I just went through that. Our transportation director, Eric Anderson, has got the title of Dr. Doom now because of all that. But the other big time bomb that's sitting out there that we're really concerned about is our pending operations and maintenance needs. We do not have really anything in the budget for operations and maintenance. And here's something that we're looking at. We're planning right now for the 2040 horizon. In 2040, the stack will be 55 years old. And that's all on steel structures, which means that all those structures are going to have to be replaced. And I don't even want to start to talk about the Deck Park Tunnel. So where does that leave us? And this is my last slide, and I'll be happy to take any questions. We are in the process of generating our next-gen regional transportation plan. Over the next 6 months, the Transportation Policy Committee will be, I know, learning more and more about this. But the reasons that we call it next-gen is that it's not really looking back to what we did back in 2003. It's really stepping back and saying, okay, what are our priorities? What are our policies? What are the performance measures? What are the things that we really want to do? It really says that we need to go in a new direction in terms of where we need to go. And so as you can see there, we're targeting trying to have this completed by December of 2015, which is a lot of work that we have to do. But again, it's something that we feel very strongly about, and something that we can really work towards. And like I said, the Transportation Policy Committee would be looking at a lot of these topics, and we're looking to really expand their agenda so that they can really concentrate and focus on some of these topics at hand. I talked a little bit about the managed lanes study, and that involves congestion pricing. Well, a congestion price system is a lot different than a non-congestion price system. And so we'll need to really talk about those issues and get policy direction from the policy committee so we can figure out where to go. So that's my presentation. I tried to keep it as quickly as I could. You got to switch back.
You can come up for air now, Robert. Any questions or comments, council members?
Probably further.
Thank you. You know, it's a lot to absorb, but I think it's really important that the council become more and more familiar with what we're up against, as not only a city, but as a region and a state, because ultimately it impacts decisions that we make right here at the local level. Particularly when we look at our own needs within the city of Surprise, and as we're building our budget, and as we're looking at trying to grow jobs and economic development, transportation investments and economic development are inextricably linked. So we have to be thinking about the big picture and be able to drill it all the way down to the impact on Ma and Pa right next door. So thank you for bringing that to our attention and giving us kind of an overview. And we'll hope to do this on a regular basis so that we're keeping people up to speed. And pretty soon, every one of us will be able to talk in acronyms. But we'll know what we're talking about. And so that will really be helpful. So I thank you again for your patience for sitting through the rest of our evening and for sharing this information. Chris, did you have anything to say? Thanks.
I just wanted to let you know that we actually have started on updating the transportation plan for the city of Surprise. The last one was done and adopted in 2005, and a lot of things have changed since then. I won't go into this, and in fact, I'll conclude my presentation with a couple of thoughts. One is the need for the city to be very strategic in its approach to transportation and looking at where we want to spend our resources, how we want to get the best bang for the buck. Regional partnerships are key to this. Funding strategies are critical, and it's something that we'll be discussing in the context of doing the transportation plan and looking at how we can finance the transportation improvements that the city wants to make. And we need to start preparing now for the next funding measure, whether that's a Prop 500, whether it's something that happens at the state level, or what that is. We really need to make sure that the city is very clear about what its needs are and what its priorities are, so that it's in a good position to participate as a regional partner in doing that. That concludes my presentation. So stay tuned. Next time we'll talk about the local transportation plan.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both of you. I appreciate your input.
Oh, okay.
All right. Next item.
Staff presentation regarding the fiscal year 2013 budget status report through February.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We will go through this quickly. I know it's been a very long night, and so it's easy to go through quickly when you have good news. And so this is our monthly budget report. You've had the good news for the last several months. The continued good news is we continue to have some very positive results in our finances. Quickly, you have the presentation there in front of you. Our revenues are still above budgeted by about 1.3%. This is because our building permits and related fees for development agreements are up. Just some supplemental information here that you don't have there. For example, we budgeted for 250 new single-family homes for this fiscal year. Through February, we've already had 308. So, 8 months into the fiscal year, we've already surpassed what we thought we would be seeing in development relative to single-family homes. Also increases in our local sales taxes. Some quick numbers there. Our construction sales tax is up about $600,000. Our restaurant and bar tax, and Skip, you've seen this and mentioned this, it's up $265,000. Our rental and our leasing revenue is also up about $306,000. An interesting note, though, is our retail sales. Big box, they're down about $300,000, which is interesting. We're going to keep an eye on that, but overall, it's up and it's doing well. Our expenses right now, year to date, are 1.8% below what was budgeted. A lot of that is timing. One of our favorite words around here is seasonal. They will be leveling out. We're anticipating we'll still be below, but you'll probably be leveling out over the next couple months as those expenses, especially some of those seasonal expenses, you'll come through. We have made good progress, actually, relative to our vacancy savings. You may recall that we were a little bit behind when we were probably about a quarter way through the fiscal year. We have made up for that, and we are now ahead of schedule by about $300,000. And so we're going to continue our aggressive approach on vacancy savings. What's more is that that current savings will also help with some of the changes that the council has made recently, and we'll be able to help fund some of those decisions. And like I say, we'll continue to monitor that. The resources, you can see here, these are the standard graphs that you've seen several times. You can see the fiscal year 12 actual, what we had adopted relative to budget for fiscal year 2013, and then you can see so far the actual and what we're projecting. And again, our budget was up about 5.1%. We tried to be conservative, and that is playing out, and we're about 1.3% higher relative to what we had even budgeted. The resources, again, we're tracking very well, for what we thought we'd be getting, through each one of the months. You can see the actual and budgeted, going through February. We're a little bit different, a little higher, a little lower in some areas, but again, overall, for our resources and for our revenues, we are up. Sales tax, this does exclude construction. We are tracking very well, and it is up 10%. It's 10% higher than where we were in fiscal year 2012. So again, we're seeing some significant increases in our sales taxes. In our construction sales tax, as you can see, we are significantly higher. We are 42.2% higher in our construction sales tax, fiscal year 13, year over year compared to fiscal year 12. The little star there that you see, the first $1.25 million that you receive in this construction sales tax, is transferred. After that, is transferred over to the capital projects. You can see where we hit that last year was, close to about halfway through the year. We hit that mark, much more quickly this year, given the increases in the revenue. So again, all in all, very good, very stable, trends that we're seeing for this fiscal year. This is the summary, going through each one of the areas. Again, local sales tax, you can see, is ahead of where we had budgeted. The state shared revenue is down a little bit. However, there is a bit of a timing issue there. We're anticipating about another $150,000 coming in for vehicle licensing. That will help even that out. Charges for services are up. A lot of that does come in line with our construction activity that we've had and our permit activity. Property tax is exactly right where we thought it would be. Our franchises are a little bit down, but again, that's a timing issue. We're working with Cox, and we're anticipating a little bit more in franchise revenue, about $270,000 more coming in franchise revenue for Cox as well. And transfers are exactly where they should be, because we're in control of that. Our expenditures. Again, you can see fiscal year 12, just under $45 million at 44.9. You can see our policy direction in keeping our expenses pretty much where they were for fiscal year 12, keeping our expenses very flat, allowing for those revenues to increase and capturing that revenue increase in order to help get our fully funded reserve as soon as possible. So you can see it was 1.1%. Adopted budget over actuals, and then you can see right now we're actually below not only where we thought we'd be with our budget, but we're even below where we were in actuals for fiscal year 2012. So all in all, our expenses are tracking, not only where they should be, but a little bit below. So it's very encouraging as well. And then you can just see how that is playing out. On a month-to-month basis, it is tracking very well. Our actuals were below for the first quarter of the year. We had some of our IT contracts, come into play there in November. You can see the spike. We're anticipating that spike, but all in all, again, we're tracking very well, and we are below what we had anticipated. Again, broadening that up into basic categories, personnel, you can begin to see, those vacancy savings that we're capturing. Supplies we're right on, is services as well. Again, we're a little bit below, but there is a timing component. We'll probably see that level out as well. And you really didn't have that much money in capital in the general fund. You had about $35,000, which in the $35 million graph doesn't show up very well. So that's why you have some zeros there. The last slide, what you see here, this is a slide that you're probably very familiar with that sort of keeps track of how we're doing relative to where our fund balance is. The beginning balance, the actual is 1.7. That is unaudited. We are looking for some different numbers. We're anticipating some better numbers coming in once we finalize our fiscal year 12 audit, which will be coming up here in about the next 6-7 weeks. You can see, as we've already talked about, our revenues and our expenditures, the 1.3 up in revenues, the 1.8 down in expenses. So right now, all of that keeping on track, we'd be about 19, wouldn't that be nice? $9.2 million.
Excited, Chris.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Oh, we're going to try. We're anticipating right now the $9.2 million ending fund balance. You did have some planned transfers, again, in interest. The city council made that policy decision back in November, so that has been taken out. So right now, we're generally anticipating about $9.2 million, and we are anticipating as well that number will increase as we finalize our fiscal year 12 audit and will go up, which shows we are on our way, I'd say even potentially well on our way towards achieving our fully funded reserve of $13 million by June 24th of 2014. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Council members, questions? Questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The last item.
Review and discussion of the annual action plan 2013-2014 priorities.
We'd like to end on a plan of action.
I'm letting you work up the anticipation for it. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. I'm just very quickly going to just discuss the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. We're just going to go over some background, some public service funding priorities, and then the annual action plan funding priorities. As you are all aware, but just very briefly, City of Surprise is a CDBG entitlement community. Last year, we received approximately $449,000. New allotments have not been addressed yet, and so we're anticipating approximately the same of about $450,000. And with that projection is what we've put this plan together with. Of that, we can put aside 15% for public services. Obviously, anything that we do with this funding has to meet a national objective, low to moderate income individuals, area benefit of where there is a majority of low to moderate income individuals, or a limited clientele special needs groups such as elderly, disabled adults, homeless, etc. If it doesn't meet it, we can't fund it. Again, area benefit and limited clientele as described. There is a process. Obviously, we have a 5-year plan. Within that plan, we reaffirm on a yearly basis, and within our yearly annual action plan, we describe public services that we want to help address. You're very familiar with the timeline that begins in December with a public service application. We then went to Planning and Zoning to hold a public hearing, and then Planning and Zoning gave their funding recommendations, which is what we're presenting here. We opened up our plan to a comment period, and then we are presenting today at the workshop, and then hope to seek a approval on April 9th for the final plan to be submitted to HUD on May 15th. Funding, public service funding priorities are everything from youth training to recreation programs to services for seniors. This year we received $121,000 worth of requests. I believe we're actually able to award about $67,500, but as you can see, we have a lot of nonprofit agencies that are looking to provide services such as CAS for emergency shelter, St. Mary's for emergency food boxes, the City of Surprise for the Summer Youth Employment Program, Arizona Charter for their basketball literacy program, and Benavia for Adult Day, Home Delivered Meals, and Child Development Center. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend funding of St. Mary's Food Bank at $17,500, Summer Youth Employment at $24,000. That would give us the ability to fund approximately 10 students. Benavia at $14,000, and Arizona Charter Academy at $12,000. Within the consolidated plan, we also have project priorities, what we intend to do within that 5-year span that included housing rehab, parks and recreational facility improvements, street improvements, facade improvements, and public services. As you can see, we've addressed quite a bit of these needs within the city. They still continue to be needs, and so that is what we're going to talk about in the next slide. The first thing that we're going to propose is continuation of the housing rehabilitation program. It is a citywide program for eligible homeowner-occupied homes. We do up to $10,000 of emergency repair on a home. Here we're giving an example of a roof repair that was completed. We are also proposing having an earmark of about $75,000 to do park improvements. This particular park is Bicentennial Park, where we would have some connectivity of the sidewalks. We would put concrete underneath the risers and the dugout, and then I believe that this is a little bit of a nuisance in the area, is this abandoned bathroom that doesn't have very much lighting, so we would look to demolish that structure because there are other bathrooms available within Bicentennial Park. So with that, we are proposing setting aside $217,500 for housing rehabilitation, $75,000 for the OTS park improvements, $67,500 for public services, $90,000 for administrative allocation, which pays for staff hours and anything else required by the CDBG grant, and meets the no more than 20% of the grant to be set aside for administrative costs for a total of $450,000. With that, I answer any questions you might have.
Just one real quick.
Councilmember Hall.
Are these funds subject to sequestration?
I understand that we have already been notified that we are seeing a possibility of a reduction of 10 to 20%. That was the case last year also, and ours actually went up. The amount that we received went up simply because of the different demographics that came out as part of the census.
Oh, okay.
So how it's going to affect Surprise, I'm still really not sure, just because we do have a little bit of aging housing and things like that.
Right.
But
Okay. Thanks, Christina. Good job.
Any other questions? No? Thank you very much, Christina. I believe there was one member of the public who wished to talk on this item. Bob, was this an item that you wanted to talk to us about?
Well, I get the privilege to be last, huh?
Well, you wanted to talk on the last item, so here you are.
Well, I was just
You
curious
get the
about
last
this.
word.
I mean, I was just curious about this because I couldn't understand why the planning and zoning got the approval on who they're going to give the money to. I was just, we never done that before, because the council always talks about the charitable donations, who they're going to give it to. So now staff, I hear staff now, they gave you the approval. What they gave approval tonight wasn't an approval they gave to planning and zoning. We have a couple of council members here. They were at the planning and zoning meeting. Maybe they can tell how they took I think it's $14,000. I'm not against Benavia, but I mean, they took money out. What the staff recommended was St. Mary's Food Bank, Arizona Charter Academy, Surprise Summer Youth Employment. So when they went there, it's not clear because the planning and zoning doesn't have there's no TV there, I guess. So they don't have good minutes. But they took the money out. They took $14,000 out of that youth employment program and gave it to Benavia. So I think they ought to be more clear how you move this money around, because it's not clear. You can't find it. They say they gave it to them. Now, I don't know if these two council members, if they had any direct communications with planning and zoning and asked for that money. How'd that money get into Benavia? That's the only thing I'm going to ask. I mean, if you can't answer it, how do they put it in there? It wasn't recommended by staff.
Bob, if you would, I think Mr. Mihaly can probably talk to you after the meeting. He can probably answer that question. Jeff Mihaly, he's right out here at the back of the room.
What I'm telling you, see, I don't know, we don't realize, see, that public service funding is $67,500. We don't have to give that to charitable organization. We can spend that money ourselves. Maybe if the ADA needs some money, or maybe, I mean, we can give some to charity, but maybe you want to keep some to the city and pass it out, because the department heads can dole out that money for the causes stated in the fund. See, I never realized that before. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
And seeing no further agenda items, no further members of the public who wish to speak to us, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
A motion has been made and seconded?
Yes.
And we are adjourned.